Good morning, everyone. This is Aru from PlungeCast here in Whangarei, New Zealand. It's early morning here for us. It's about 8:30. Normally not the way we do things usually, but we have a guest joining us in about a quarter of an hour from Canada named Larry Higgins from NYOBI Comics. All the way across from Canada. So before he comes on, we're going to talk about Art of Evans, Shane Evans, recently released, only a couple of months ago, a comic book called...
Oh, we're going to talk about Chronicles of the Wastelands.
Awesome. Self-published independent comic book available in New Zealand, and also I think can they buy it from I think it's New Zealand Comics as well at Armageddon coming up.
Yeah, New Zealand Comics have been taking copies to all the Armageddons. There's a couple of stores in Christchurch that now stock it. There's a Pop Weasel and Sound Room, I think.
Awesome.
And Heroes for Sale has now started stocking it too. So
there you go.
In Christchurch, and it's been at Plunge, and it will be at the next Plunge. And
awesome.
Hopefully, most of the next issue will be finished by then. So
cool. Hey, morning, Ross. Thanks for joining us from Wellington. Now, what I was going to just say is, it's early morning. My brain's still trying to work into it, and same with Shane's. You can see, we're a bit, not used to this time zone. Here in Whangarei, usually it's we do the 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It allows us to have, get focused and stuff. So excuse me if I'm a bit out of joint. So if you're watching this on Facebook, thank you. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you as well. Please like and subscribe. I usually don't ask that because I'm not used to doing that, because we usually do this on Facebook and we don't do the like and subscribe thing that once this is out on YouTube and open to the world in that sense. Thank you for that. We love for you to support us through that. And the whole aim of PlungeCast is to get our local people, New Zealanders, inspired to get into the pop culture scene through comic books, through writing, through art, through literature, just short stories, poetry, whatever it is, comic books, short, long form, to inspire people through who we bring on here. And you can see that we bring a lot of different folks on because we want to have them have their say and inspire you, because it's not not all that fun when you listen just to me talk about things. And I love to have Shane on because, great way to bounce off ideas and questions to people that I don't have the right questions for sometimes. So I'm really grateful for Shane to do that. So I really want you guys to support that. Support the book, Chronicles of the Wasteland, throughout New Zealand, through the book, bookshops, comic shop mostly. Isn't that right? At the moment.
At the moment, Jason has them. He takes them to most Armageddons, 2 comic stores in Christchurch, and Heroes for Sale in Auckland.
Awesome. So there you go. You got 2 major stores holding them. Now, tell us a bit about the story.
It's let's just say the basic look of it is a Mad Max type story. It is slowly becoming more of a horror story. If I sort of go into too much detail, it might give away some of the story. Yeah. But the general gist is it's a post-apocalyptic. It's kind of a fun adventure. It's just Stu recently reviewed it on one of his podcasts. He said if I took out a few swear words and a couple of other things, he said it would actually be an almost all ages adventure book. So cool. it may get a re-edit for future uses.
Yeah.
It's not going to affect the story at all if I take out a few swear words and and cover up a tiny bit of nudity, because the nudity wasn't if you read the
gratuitous.
story, the way she was found was yeah, she was stored in like a cryogenic freezer type thing, so she wasn't closed. But
Yeah.
it's not essential to the story.
Mm.
So
That's something that, like, we as artists and writers, especially in comic books, have to deal with a lot, don't we? Like, what to put in, what not to put in, what age group you're going for. And this is sometimes people think, oh, you're self-censoring, but sometimes you kind of look at it and go, well, wouldn't it be better if without it we could get a bigger audience, and so on. Or the fact that if we specifically aim it for someone, because I know I write stories specifically for some age group, whereas I write others for not for a different age group. So this is a three-part story, or three issue story.
Started out planned as a 3-part story. It may end up being a 4-part story, which means I'm going to get a lot more work to do. Yeah, the self-censoring thing. It's as a fan of violent 80s and 90s movies, and even some of the 70s ones, it was just what appealed to me. But when someone rightly said that if you take out a couple of words here and there, it appeals to everyone, because the cartoon violence doesn't seem to shock anyone. It's a couple of swear words and a nipple, and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really, that is quite strange, isn't it? Like, I mean, because we're so used to seeing violence as normal things, because of war and stuff going on all around us all the times, and people, being aggressive and all that, and on the, and families, domestic stuff. We're so used to it, but like the moment, I think it's just because we feel that part of it should be in the bedroom at home in the privacy of people's homes and not out in the open. I think that's probably why it is like that.
Well,
there's
a tiny little story to go with that violence sort of idea. I did a couple of pages. This is right at the start of the first issue, so it's not giving much away. Did a couple of pages, and I went for the subtle look of having a showing that the guy got beheaded, but not actually showing it. I was going for that.
Right.
So there's a silhouette, the outcome over here, but no actual shot of it happening. And I was showing that to a few people, and a kid, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name because it was like a year or so ago. Yeah. But the kid was looking at the pages and saying how cool they were. But he goes, you have to show the guy's head coming off. Because it would be awesome. This is like a 9-year-old. So
I mean, like, I think it's zombie. The idea of zombies and the horror and ghosts and stuff doesn't, like, there's younger groups, younger kids getting into it. I remember my nephew drawing, I think about 9-year-old, 8-year-old, and doing zombies, and I was like, that's really cool, because the idea that you can actually create original work based around this sort of monster, whatever it is, makes your creative brain work a bit more. And I was like really into it. I was like, yeah, okay, well, I'll write a little story you can draw it for, And then I found out later that his teacher at school said, no, you can't do that anymore. And so he got all bummed out. And so, some other kids that hadn't experienced that sort of thing, in the home, sort of like, and not being so, what is it called? Protected, mollycoddled or whatever from the world, probably didn't understand that this is just art, it's just like cartoons and stuff. And it was really cartoons. It wasn't like, realistic looking things. And I think that sort of like teachers kind of put you off stuff, rather than saying, okay, don't do this in class, do it at home, that's fine. Sort of like directing in a way that's more mature and more and a better way of supporting someone's creativity without saying, no, don't do it, or this is not good enough, this is not the right environment, or not right environment, but you shouldn't do that, that's not what your age group, whatever, should be doing, or and it kind of bummed me out, because I was like, it's just kind of like stopping him from maybe becoming the next freaking Frazetta or what's his name? Gosh, who did The Walking Dead?
Uh, I know the writer, but I can't remember. Mike something. Yeah,
Oh,
there's
Alan.
an English.
Yeah, Adler. Yeah, Mike Adler. I think it was Mike Adler. And
Yeah,
I mean, look at that. 10 years after putting that book out, and he's in his 30s or 40s, the guy, right? And so 10 years after putting that out, it's a freaking huge show, with another show with Kiwis acting in it, and 10 years of series on its own. I think it was 2010 it came out, so it's about, and then it came out in 2010 they made the TV series, and everybody was copying that all of a sudden, but if you kind of jump in and go, no, you can't do this, you kind of go, well, somebody's talent could be stunted because of that. And I think the younger kids are the more we encourage them into art and literature, and the nicest way to do that is by, giving them tools of the trade, as they say, or things to inspire them, like comic books or books. I think that's a really cool way to go than to say, well, don't do that. It's not appropriate.
yeah.
I think we lose out on a lot of great talent that way. I think I've had a lot of people talk about that, how teachers have done that to them when they're younger, and put them off. So I'm going to bring in Larry now, and he's in, and we'll bring him in.
Hello.
There we go.
Here we are.
Hey, Larry. Good morning.
Well, good morning to you too. It is 5:47 p.m. So I think we got our times all mixed up.
Oh no, you're right. You're good.
I thought we were actually going to be on a little later tonight. So I'm not dressed. I'm not proper. I'm not anything. That's why I'm not on camera. But if I could take like 5 minutes out and clean myself up, then we'd be, good to go. But I can talk for a few minutes, and then, maybe you guys can take it away for a little bit, and then I rush right back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. You can do that. We'll carry on with our little spiel. Thank you.
This is it, man. I'm going to spread the word of the show. So are we actually live right now?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so where are we live?
Shane,
because I went to
YouTube, Shane and I just talk about his book, and then we'll put you on when you come back in.
Yeah, but where are we live at? I went to go to YouTube, and I don't see the live broadcast.
It's on Facebook.
On Facebook.
Yeah, on Plunge Comics.
Okay, well, I need
one word.
Yeah, you guys carry on, and I will start sharing out the word.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. Oh, that's cool for him to jump in and let us know. Okay, so yeah, so talk about it. I mean, we've done a few chats throughout our previous podcasts about how you got into art and stuff. Do you want to give a little spiel about that?
It's to be honest, how I got into art was just comics. I'd like to say something deep and meaningful, but I had older brothers, and they had hand-me-down comics, and then you get Asterix and Tintin. So you start with the basic stuff that's for the kids, that appeals to everyone, and then you have a couple of older brothers that hand you a 2000 AD or something, and it's like, yes, this is closer to an action film or a horror movie. So I like this,
Yeah.
So basically, comics did start all my interest in art. So, and then once you find that out, you go on to things like Frazetta and all these sort of illustrators that were famous, and some of the weirder ones like H.R. Geiger and stuff like that. But it all comes down to, I was reading it and I wanted to draw my version of the characters, or even come up with short stories of the same characters. I mean, my son Max, who he doesn't really like to draw, and he doesn't have an interest in drawing. He drew comics of Spider-Man and stuff when he was about 8.
Yeah.
So, that's just because that's what he was that was actually a PlayStation game that he was playing, but he wanted to draw Spider-Man because of that.
Yeah.
So it just comes down to my childhood, really. I just didn't stop, unlike some people.
Mm.
Some people grew up and got real jobs.
Yeah. But I mean, you work full time anyway, right? So, but and also as an what we would say is a fine artist, but work in pop culture medium, and as a genre type thing, so you're painting a Joker, you're painting on Judge Dredd and horror scenes, you know,
Yeah.
um, but as kind of like to just is it do you do that because it's your passion, or is it paintings kind of make money, extra money to do other stuff, or how does it fall in?
Painting in New Zealand does not make money.
Mm.
Well, at least not my style, because mine's illustration and stuff.
Mm.
It's not fine art. It's I don't have a fan club of people following my fine art.
Yeah,
So it's one of those things that you just do it because you kind of have to. Like,
yeah,
if I could honestly give it up and become a mechanic or something, I probably would have, because I love old cars too. But
yeah,
it's one of those things. If I put a pen down and leave it for a month or two because I've had a bad month, I
yeah,
swear that I'm never going to do this crap again, and blah blah blah. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I'll see an art supply or a sketchbook, and I'll buy another one and start again. So it's kind of a compulsion.
yeah,
It's one of those things that you just can't deny that you like, because you keep coming back to it. So
yeah. I think it's it's a part of. I mean, like, I think writing and art is something like creativity is a part of people's lives, and if you pick it up early on, you tend to hold on to it and you continue to do it. I think that's why I think it's important for, like I was mentioning earlier, to have kids being inspired to do that early on, because you kind of set them on the right path. Or if you put a pen and paintbrush in the hand of a child or something, or a comic book, or small book itself, you know, you kind of give them a roadmap in the sense of like what they could sort of get into that might be healthy, and keep them away from anything negative, because a lot of that whole the stories, they kind of have the imagination going, and that idea that you don't need to get into the bad things to be creative, because creativity, you can be in your own zone, be able to play with play with the ideas of creating things that you're creating. And I think it's I don't know, did you kind of like have somebody motivate you to get into it, or inspire you to get into it, or hold
uh,
kind of like hold your hand along the way or something?
no, again, like, even through high school and stuff, I knew that just every time I was bored, or every time I was had
Hmm.
downtime or something, I would just end up drawing or
Yeah,
painting. So I thought, if I was going to try and do a career, it might as well be something I kind of just like to do.
yeah,
I also thought about filmmaking,
yeah,
uh, because I've got a huge collection of bad DVDs.
yeah,
Um, but again, I went to the course that you did both of those on. So for 2 years, I did filmmaking and illustration, but in the last year, you had to choose. So I chose the illustration side. I'm still kind of 50-50, wishing I'd actually done the other one, because
yeah,
you could probably do filmmaking during the day and draw at night, but
yeah,
that's a long time ago and it's happened. So I think the main people that kind of inspire me is kind of backwards, because when I was at Polytech, I learnt the most from the tutors that I disliked, the ones that would
mm,
piss me off and tell me that you can't do this and you can't do that and that looks
yeah,
wrong. Like, at the time I disliked it. I did not like hearing that, and I was like, if you don't agree with you, blah blah blah. Usually they'd make good points though, and you'd learn a lot from that sort of criticism. So yeah, so there's a few tutors that I learnt more from because I didn't always agree with them than I did with the other ones that I was friends with.
Yeah.
So I can't say they inspired me, but they motivated me. Motivated me to prove them wrong. You know, it's one of those things where if you're told you can't do something, you want to do it.
Yeah, you want to prove people wrong. You're right. It's like I think that's the other side of creativity, is like you're kind of like anti-authority kind, you know, you kind of like you know, it's that I call it the punk attitude. It's like you can't tell me what to do because I'm going to prove you wrong kind of attitude. It's not like because I'm going to do something bad, I'm going to do something actually good to prove that I'm actually better at this than I am. Talking about filmmaking, I was watching an interview with, I think, Ferguson interviewing Clive Barker way back probably in the 90s when Mr. Be Gone came out, which is like a short novella. And I'm quite excited because I actually have the hardcover of that, where, you know, they're releasing that. And he's talking about him being, you know, the difference between him being an painter and a writer, and then the movies. He says, like, you know, I get to control, you know, and what I do in the books and in the paintings, but the filmmaking's collaborative, and so there's a lot more people involved in how that cake is made. And I think, you know, I've run into other people out there as well. You know, at Armageddon a few years back, and I think it was oh gosh, no, I forgot it. He did Whiteout, the movie that was filmed in New Zealand. I think with Kate Beckinsale and Gary. Gosh, I can't remember now, but I've got a couple of his books. But he was talking about, like, because I said to him, it's like, how does it, you know, what is it like when you have a movie, like your graphic novel being made into a movie, you know? And he said basically the comic book's the comic book, the graphic novel's the graphic novel, you know, the film's a film. And I think a lot of times we see a lot of movies nowadays being made by the numbers. You know, you kind of feel like they're ticking away boxes. Like, if we put that person in there, then we'll get that little tick, you know, audience. If we do that, we'll get that little audience. But then the story itself becomes so, you know, the mise en scene, you know, or, you know, hodgepodge, that it kind of loses its what the aim is of it. And we're seeing a lot of that now.
Well, it's the studio system, from what I've heard from directors, is basically the more money they seem to give you, the more control that they want. Which you can see why they want to. They don't want to give you $100 million and you go and do a crazy art house film. They give you $100 million. You have to do a film that appeals to the most people possible. But appealing to the most people possible is kind of watering things down. So I think that's why independent films or low budget films, even indie comics, I think they're doing better now than they ever used to, because it's usually a more individual expression. It's like one writer, or a writer and an artist, or one creative team of directors, you know, doing a story that they want to do, and they don't care what everyone else thinks. Which is why I think a lot of the good movies at the moment are some of the cheap horror films, and some of these sort of like low budget. Some of the low budget Netflix films and stuff are actually better than some of the Hollywood movies, I think.
Yeah. Oh, NYOBI posted that it was Robert Kirkman with Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, you watched. Sorry.
That was the writer, Robert Kirkman. The artist was Mike.
Yeah, I think it was Michael Adlad or Mike Adlad. So I mean, you actually have a large DVD collection of independent, you know, movies and films. So how did you get into collecting DVDs and stuff? I mean, I know a lot of people like will pick up, their favorite, but like actually go out of their way to actually hunt them down and stuff is a different thing itself.
You collect DVDs because you have an unusual taste. If it's a movie that's constantly on TV or constantly on Netflix, I don't need to buy it. I don't need to hunt it down. I've got a lot of movies that most people would consider terrible, and to be honest, some of them are. But when you watch it, you realize the story is great. Like the special effects, the acting's rubbish, but you've never seen a story like that before, and you won't forget what happens in it. So when people say things about bad movie directors and stuff like that, and they put people like Ed Wood and stuff on their lists, I actually completely disagree with that. Because Ed Wood had no money. He made terrible films in the 50s, but 50 years later, people still talk about them, and they still remember them, and they still know who he is. So I'm like, I don't think that makes you the worst filmmaker in the world. I think that makes you quite successful for a guy with no money and not much technical skill. Like you compare that to someone that made, I don't know, an average Marvel film. Like, who made it? What's his name? Who wrote it? You don't know. Like, you forget.
Yeah. I kind of only know the only ones that come into mind is I think the Russo brothers and Jon Favreau, and that's early on, not the recent ones.
And I remember Taika, and that's because I don't like his one.
Yeah.
So, I think those guys are worse movie makers than people that make Troma films, for instance. Because if you see a Troma film, you never forget a Troma film.
Yeah.
Good or bad. I mean, you might be scarred for life, but you're not going to forget it.
I'm just going to check and see if if NYOBI's if Larry's ready, but he'll chime in when he's ready. So talking about DVDs, I picked this up this week. Or last week, I think it was. Yeah.
What is it? 11 something?
Yeah, it's TH 1138.
Lucas's film.
And this is actually the director's cut series, and it's 2-disc set. And now you know more about films than I do. You have better memory at it than I do. Do you want to talk about why this movie sticks out for us?
Well, see, I don't love that film, but I do. The ideas behind it are great. It's a very what is it? It's like a 1984 sort of government controls everything film. And of course, the major thing for film geeks is it's George Lucas doing a sci-fi.
Yeah.
He went on to do some other sci-fis that did okay.
Yeah.
But if you watch his Star Wars movies and then you watch that, you're not going to get the same treatment there, because one's very dark and bleak and the other one's Star Wars.
The other thing is, like, they actually created the sound system THX 1138, or the THX sound system, which basically is in almost every cinema. That wicked surround sound that makes you part of that movie. Whereas, like, before, it would be just like you're just watching it and the sound's coming at you, and suddenly there was a sound that was surrounding you and felt like it was coming through the floor, coming through the back of the head, on top of the head, all around. I think that's one of the other reasons why it always sticks out to me, apart from the film itself, the sound quality and the actually, creating the speakers or whatever it was that they did at that time for it. Do you know much about that?
Not a lot, no. I don't know a lot about the technical side of that, but I do know that basically George Lucas, even if you're not a fan of George Lucas, half of his technology you will love, because some of the guys that worked at Industrial Light and Magic and stuff went on to make Photoshop and stuff like that. So they've had a huge influence on basically half the creative world. So you get a couple of creative filmmakers who want to make things easier for themselves. They invent new technology. So
all right, we've got Larry back.
Sort of.
How's it going, mate?
Good. I'm not used to
Excellent.
the way you guys got your StreamYard laid out, so I'm trying to get the camera to center on me, and I can't figure that out. So
Let me try something else then.
no, we're good. We're
Make
good.
it easier
We're
for
good. So yeah. Oh, see, that's what we're used to right there.
all right.
Yeah, this is more of the standard thing, you know. What's
Okay.
going on,
Yeah.
brother?
Good, mate. How's yourself?
You know, dudes, I'm literally just waking up. I'm a nighthawk. This comic book business, right?
Right.
24/7, dudes. It is. It's
Yeah, it's true.
nonstop. I'm on the go all the time, you know.
Yeah.
Whether it's interviews, approving art, writing scripts, posting and promoting around on Facebook. You know, we'll do shows like this, but they're not even live. You know what I mean? Like it's just me and a group of guys in the back, and we're just shooting the breeze about comics. You know.
Yeah.
So it's all good, man. And I appreciate the invite to the show.
Awesome.
I love, especially when I never have talking to the people before. Like this is the first time I've ever talking to you guys. So this is going to be a treat. I want you guys to ask me anything. You know,
Cool.
I'm ready to go. You know.
Awesome. Well, just like you, we've just woken up ourselves. Only, a couple, I mean, I've only woken up about 45 minutes ago. It's 9 o'clock here in the morning, and it's, for you, it's the same deal. You're waking up and we're waking up. So, tell us a bit about yourself, Larry.
Well, I'm in Canada on the East Coast. I write the comic books NYOBI and Savage Sin. Been doing it for about a decade. NYOBI, Savage Sin just came out this year. We're published. We're in comic book shops. Find comic book shops anywhere. Anyone that carries Antarctic Press, you should be able to find NYOBI, you know. And soon to be, anything else that we release. So shout out to Mr. Ben Dunn and AP for putting us, in Diamond Magazine. We also run Kickstarters. We had a very successful Kickstarter for NYOBI Outbreak. And I'm doing a Kickstarter right now for NYOBI, the cosplay editions, which is NYOBI cosplaying as various ladies from the X-Men.
Right. So, how did you get into the whole comic thing?
Well, I mean, I think I have the same story as maybe like a lot of other people. I was into comic books as a kid. I remember buying Archie and Richie Rich and this sort of stuff, like, children's kids books, right, for comics. And then I got into the superhero stuff. It was Spider-Man and Batman and X-Men and things of that nature in the sort of like the mid to late 80s. And then the Image founders sort of made their big mark, right? And the art style started to change, and we had more pouches and more guns and sexier ladies, and and I really ate all that up, especially sort of like the bad girl genre. So things started coming out like Danger Girl and Witchblade and Evangeline and Darkchild and Lady Death and Dawn and all this stuff, and I gobbled all that up. And I always wanted to be a comic book artist, so I'd always try to draw, and I can't draw. I'm no comic book artist. And it took me, a few years to realize that was never going to happen. But that didn't mean I couldn't do comics. It just means I wasn't going to draw them. I mean, I'm a creative guy. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I make up all the scenarios. I world build, and we were doing that in the superhero realm. I don't know if you guys are familiar with tabletop RPGs, but I was playing like a lot of like Champions and Heroes Unlimited and GURPS and stuff like this. So NYOBI had existed since I was 16. And, back in 2013, 14, I said, you know what? I'm just going to write a script. I don't care if anyone ever even draws it, right? I'm just going to write a script. I'm going to print it out, like have it in my hand and just say, hey, here it is. And if I can get someone to work on it, fantastic. If not, well, I got my story. Two local guys here in town helped me put that first comic book together. We may have sold 200 copies of it, you know, a couple of shows, that sort of stuff. And then they went on to go do other things, but I actually kept NYOBI going, you know, and working with a variety of other people. Long story short, we were black and white for a few years. We went to color. Once we went to color, we started doubling our profits instantly. So color is a thing, folks. And once that happened, we had an extra bit of money. We started hiring more professionals, and it just built up from there, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So how many, like you're saying, you're releasing another one soon. So how many issues and over these past, what is it, like about 2 decades almost?
No, 1 decade.
Or 1 decade. But like, I mean, the story, you know, over that time, how many stories have you written?
I think we've done like 10 issues. Like, it was averaging 1 a year, but now we're faster. So now they're starting to come out like 2 or 3, right? Like we just did Savage Sin. I'm doing the cosplay edition. Then I'm doing a crossover with Ben Dunn, and then it's NYOBI Outbreak 2, and then it's Savage Sin 2. So now this, like, the ball is rolling downhill, and it's just, you know, sort of getting bigger, you know. But initially it was like 1 book a year, you know, because it takes a long time to do a comic, right? You know, especially when it's not your full-time gig. You got a day job, you got wife, you got kids, you got responsibilities, and then you got to find somewhere to fit in to make, you know, this 24, 30 page to comic book, whatever it is that you're doing, you know. So it take a little while. And of course, they're not cheap to make either, you know.
So did it get faster because you had more artists involved or creatives involved, or was it because the artists that you had got faster at you know, at producing the artwork?
Both, right? So once they got used to NYOBI and how I work and how they work, you know, obviously once you establish that sort of relationship, you know, you can work a little bit faster. But the thing is I do run 2 teams now, right? So when I had the extra money to start the new book, I had, you know, Team NYOBI, and then I had Team Savage, and so 2 different teams working on 2 different books at once, you know, really helps, right? So
did you find that when you work with an artist for a while, that you start to sometimes write things that would suit their style or the way
you have to. You got to, right? It's like Paul Heyman in wrestling. You know, I don't know if you guys are familiar with wrestling and ECW, but Paul Heyman would say, you know, you hide the weaknesses and you emphasize on their strengths, right? You know, when it concerns certain wrestlers. And it's the same thing with an artist. If I know an artist can't draw a fucking horse for the life of them, I'm not going to have them draw horses. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I mean, you got to tailor it a little bit to their stuff, but at the same time, they got to be able to adapt to what you need, right? If you're just doing what they feel comfortable with, then you're never really challenging them, you know, or yourself. You know, you're sort of putting yourself in a pigeonhole, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, anyone who's never seen
I had a quick look at your. Yeah, I had a quick look at your page and stuff. Unfortunately, I had a quick look at lots of other people's artwork too that week. So could you give us a brief rundown of what your character is actually all about?
So NYOBI's she's a Japanese pop star who has the ability to teleport. That's her gig. The more she teleports, the more it wreaks havoc on her body, because it turns out the body's not made to jump through time and space. It's like almost like a system shock. And she's just navigating the world. She's what I call a genome, which stands for genetic anomaly, which is basically my world's version of mutants, right? But in my world, the difference is that all genomes are female. There's no male superpower, guys. And if there are, they're very few and far in between. But, you know, the men sort of make up for that because they're called augments. So in order to combat these people with these, you know, weird abilities, they have to make technology to be able to do that. And that's sort of where they come into play. So, I mean, that's the real basics of it. Right now, we're on a 4-part miniseries. We're working on issue 2 of said miniseries, which is called Outbreak, which is my take on the virus and the pandemic that we had to live for the last 2 years. Only my virus creates new genomes. And that's a scary thought, you know, to certain people. So that's sort of what's going on in Outbreak right now.
Yeah.
Cool. So how did you come up with this character, NYOBI?
Oh, like I said, I was 16 playing Heroes Unlimited, you know, and I was always big in the anime back in the day, right? So like Record of the Lotus War, Akira, of course, Ghost in the Shell, Appleseed, Dominion Tank Police. The list of like late 80s, early 90s anime will roll on. Bubblegum Crisis. So, Pigtails and that sort of stuff. And then, you throw that in with a little bit of Gem and Holograms, and you throw that in with a little bit of Dazzler. There you go. You got the major right there. This is it, right? So it's a combination of Dazzler and Magic from the X-Men with every 90s anime girl with pigtails and Gem and Holograms, essentially. So, I would start drawing her poorly, but I would draw her. And they were just for references from my own as I was role-playing her. And then in 2011, I started going to conventions. I used to go to role-playing conventions, but never comic book conventions. We didn't have them here. And when they started to appear, I would go, right? And I would have to travel 3 hours to go to these things. And then I found this magical place, dudes. It's called Artist Alley. And God damn, it was incredible. You walk up and down, and there's these people drawing things, and they're from all walks of life. They're either people just starting out all the way up to industry pros and everyone in between. And to my amazement, they would draw things for money. Right? Yeah. And so a lot of people would bring them hey, can you draw me Harley Quinn? Can you draw me Batman? Draw me Deadpool? I was like, can you draw my character?
Yeah.
And I would have my book of shitty artwork, and I would go to table and I would show these artists, and I only ever had one guy say, no, I don't draw people's original stuff, because he was worried about, reproduction. Everyone else was like, yeah, I'll draw your character. Right. And so when I started seeing her through the eyes of a professional, what she could really look like, I'm like, I gotta do something with this. I'm gonna write my script, and because this is cool. I have 2 portfolios full of just original artwork that was done throughout the years before we even did the comic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
So what was the craziest take of your character that you saw? What was the wildest version?
I don't know if there's been a wild version. I mean, there's been a lot of cool versions. I mean, I would have to go back and dig and see if there's, what I mean? I don't think there's ever been a crazy take. I mean, everyone's pretty much been on the level, I can show you just up there on the wall at some original drawings up there from Paul Green. My whole room's a mess bar. This is comic book apocalypse right now. I got books everywhere. I got stuff everywhere. There's long boxes over there. I'm packing and mailing comics. I got Geminis that got to go out in the mail. It's right now. I'm neck deep in the middle of fulfilling Savage Sin. Right. So, again,
well, I mean, talking about fulfilling, talk a bit about the Kickstarter process for those who don't know what that's about.
Well,
and how it applies to comic books.
Kickstarter is because most people know what GoFundMe is, right? So they go, "What's Kickstarter?" I go, "Well, do you know what GoFundMe is?" It's people have an issue and people donate money to help them out. I said, "Well, Kickstarter is like that. Only we don't have a problem. We have a project." You know what I mean?
Right.
So instead of my car broke down and help me out, it's I have a comic book that I need to fund. If you give me money, we can make this thing happen. And we can mail you the book when it's done, right? That's essentially what it is. So it's it's called crowdfunding, and there's a variety of different ways to crowdfund. Kickstarter just happens to be the main one, but there's Indiegogo, there's Fund My Comic, there's Crowdfunder, there's a few other ones. And so you put up a project, you throw up a couple of covers, maybe a couple of pages of art, a blurb of what your project's about. Maybe some incentives. If we make certain amount of money, you'll get these little bonuses, which we call stretch goals. And usually a campaign runs for 30 days, but you can go less or longer depending on what you feel like. And hopefully by the end of it, you meet your funding goal, if not more, and you're able to produce this work that you want to put out to the world.
Yeah.
So that's the basic
stuff. I've had someone pop in here with a comment. So the comment is, I've always been, this is from Ross Payne, Kiwi cartoonist, animator. I've always been amazed how writers are brave enough to use their own funds to hire artists. So crowdfunding makes more sense.
Well, I've done both. When I first started out, if I knew how expensive it was to make comic books, I probably never would have done it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know, right? So like my very first Kickstarter barely raised 2,000 Canadian, which is $1.50 US, you know.
Right.
And it wasn't enough money, so I ended up paying out of pocket to get the book done. And it probably went like that for the first 5 years, where we would raise some money and the rest came out of my pocket. But I am proud to say, very, very happy to say that now that we're at the level where not only does the book sort of pay for itself, but I actually make something doing it, you know. So I can show you guys something here. I'll show you the growth, what I call the growth chart. All right. If you share my screen, you guys ever done that before? Share a screen?
No, sorry. Yeah,
okay,
we just
you're
go
on StreamYard. So down below, okay.
Yeah.
There's going to be a window by me, and it's going to say accept screen share or show screen share.
There you go.
Okay. So boom. So this is a new tool for your guys' show, right? Where creators can show you stuff. So what this is, though, this is a list of all my Kickstarters that I've done. Okay. And so way back down here in 2015, we did 2,300 Canadian with 64 backers. That's for the very first NYOBI #1, which was black and white. A year later, we did 99 backers with 2,700 and change. After that, it was 104 with 3,800 and change. After that, in 2017, we did 112 backers with 4,200. We did a one shot for our villain. She got 118 backers with almost 3,800. Now, this group of books right here was all in black and white, okay?
Right.
And done by locals. Then there was a break when I started not working with the local guys and I started hiring more professionals and we went to color. Well, when we did that, we doubled our backer count to 221 with $7,200. I thought, dudes, it couldn't get better than this. This is great. I'm on cloud, right? Well, we put out part 2 of that book, 374 backers with $16,000.
Wow.
Okay, well, it can't get better than that, right? No, it did. 400 backers with $24,000. And then we put out NYOBI Outbreak 1, which is my latest NYOBI. It did 454 backers with $30,000.
Right.
Then we put out the trade paperback, which was work that was already done. That did almost 14. We put out our brand new book, which did 15. And now we're doing the cosplay editions, and that's almost at 6. So when we put out the new stuff, it definitely goes up, right? The trade paperback is reprints. The cosplay edition is reprints with new wrapping paper. And Savage Sim was a brand new property. So all in all, I think we're doing okay. You know what I mean?
It's good to see the progress right in front of you like this. This is actually on Kickstarter, right?
Yeah. And so this is sort of what we're working on now. This here is I got someone in the back here. This here is excuse me, all tongue-tied. NYOBI cosplay. So this is a reprint of Birthright 1, 2, and our origin story. For anyone that's ever missed it, it's a great time to jump on. And we give you brand new cosplay edition covers. So you're only gonna be able to get these covers on Kickstarter. We're not going to sell them in stores. We're not going to throw them up on eBay. They're not going to be anywhere else. And they're all done by Zenoscope artist Greg Bo Watson. So we have NYOBI here cosplaying as Magic from the X-Men. We have NYOBI here cosplaying as Psylocke. And my personal favorite is NYOBI cosplaying as the Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
And then you can get them. They're all connecting cover set too, right? So it's like Pokemon. You got to have them all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, we also have, and this is what the pages look like on the inside, if anyone's kind of curious to, how the art is and whatnot. So it's pretty epic stuff. And we have lots of add-ons. So if people missed out in the last few years, they're more than welcome to jump in and find the goodies that they're missing. We have digital. Digital's a thing. Don't let anyone ever let you tell you digital's not a thing. We have our Morgan Bailey cosplay cover. We have our trade paperbacks. Our beautiful cover by Paul Green and Ula Moss, who are like legends in this business, Our Keith Garvey men's magazine variant. The original NYOBI #1. This is a third printing of it. and my newest project. You know, if anyone out there did miss out on Savage Sin, this is your second chance to sort of jump on this right now and get it as an add-on. So, you know, this is the type of stuff that we do.
So, when you started doing Kickstarter, did you, you know, how did you go about sort of going, okay, this is what I'll offer, because you're doing black and white first, and how did you navigate through the first project?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, like, so you decide let's try this thing called Kickstarter, and then how did you go about setting yourself up to, you know, what, you know, apart from the comic book, what else would you offer, or did you just stick with the comic book?
Yeah, I don't really do a lot of different merch. People ask us about, and we've tried a couple different things, but usually it's just a comic. Like, people have asked us, like, when are you going to do an action figure? Or when are you going to do statues? I'm like, well, when the comic book does $50,000 a campaign, we'll consider throwing out some extra stuff, you know, because that stuff's expensive to make. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I think like building the franchise is so important before we just throw a bunch of random knickknacks at you, right?
Right.
But I mean, as the process was easy because I just watched Brian Pulido of Lady Death, you know, he's the king of Kickstarter, plain and simple. Right? As far as comic books goes, he's the king, right? So, you know, you take notes from him, you take notes from a few other people. I wasn't even allowed to use Kickstarter when I first knew about it because we didn't have it in Canada. Like, Canadians weren't allowed to have Kickstarter accounts, and then they opened that up to us around 2015. I'm like, okay, here's my shot, let's do it, you know. Because if it wasn't for Kickstarter, this book would never have been made.
Yeah, I think that was the same for us in New Zealand. Like, we weren't able to get on it because they wouldn't accept our, you know, I think it was much like a tax system or something like that, and because, you know, it's outside America and so on, so you can't trust, you know, what's people not fulfilling their things. But there is the other thing, downside of crowdfunders, where people actually promise something and they never deliver. So have you been able, you know, because you've got a track record over these, you know, decade or so of doing this, how has it been for you on, you know, being able to say, hey, look, here's my, you know, here's my delivery, here's my history with this, and here's all the artists. How did you go about, you know, getting people on board to support you?
Well, I mean, I feel bad for any new creator coming into the scene right now, just because of what you said, where some people have gotten burned, right? And it's very hard to trust someone new. How do you know they're just not going to walk away with the money? Because there are some horror stories out there of that happening, or people waiting 3 years for a book to show up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't do that. We've never done that. You know, I pride myself very much on being on track with our stuff, and that took years to cultivate. I mean, you know, how we do it, we just do it, you know, and people just come to know, oh, that's NYOBI, I don't have to worry, I'm going to get my stuff, because we've always delivered. Anytime someone comments on my page, I answer them back. Every message we get, I answer them back. If there's a problem, I fix it right away. You know, we try to over deliver in a sense. Like, for instance, we're supposed to be fulfilling Savage Sin in June. We're doing it now, and it's May, so we're a month early. We're not late, we're early, you know. And so all people are like, oh, that's cool, I wasn't expecting this so soon, right? And that, you know, leads them maybe to come back for more, because they know that you're a guy that's going to be dependable. But how you do that, you just have to do it. Like, you just have to build that track record and that trust with the backers, you know. And you got to be involved. Like, I see people that will comment on other people's Kickstarters, and they're not being responded to. They're not being answered. The concerns aren't being addressed. They're sort of left in the dark. It could go weeks on end before an update is done. You know, you should be updating your people, right? You know, especially if you got something noteworthy to say, put it out there. Let them know. Like, even if you're not ready to fulfill yet, keep them in the loop of where you are with things. Even if you are going to be a little late, say, hey, we're a little late. This happened. But don't worry, you know, we're going to take care of it, right? As long as people are informed. I think what people hate the most is, like, months go by and they're waiting on their Kickstarter and they have no idea what the hell's going on, you know?
Yeah, I'm like that as well. It's like, I mean, like, if I'm, you know, if we're saying we'll do something, you know, you got to do it. And not only that, but you're right about information. I think a lot of time people are afraid to say, well, something, you know, something isn't. So, like, something negative about the project's not coming out on time or something like that. They think, oh, I shouldn't tell them. that's going to be late because then they won't support me. I think that sort of thing. Whereas like I'm on the side where it goes, okay, the more information, the better, because, okay, something's gone wrong. Okay, guys, something's gone wrong. It's going to be a bit delayed because you don't know, like, we're humans, right? On this side of the track, right? Behind the book, behind the project, there are humans that catch the flu, get sick for a couple of days, cut a finger, and you can't draw anything, and or something. There's been a car accident. So I mean, I've been through all that with my artist, and I'm like, okay, guys just had COVID. I've had, last year I had COVID for 2 weeks, and now, like, a couple of months down the road after COVID's over, somebody's also got COVID, and now you're just thinking like, oh man, that's 2 weeks of work that person can't do, and you've got a project, and you can't go out there, oh, my friend's got COVID. Oh yeah, well, everybody's got COVID. Nobody cares about that anymore. And it's like, yeah, but that means that he's not able to do work for a couple of weeks. And I think people don't understand that side of stuff.
I came down with COVID. It was brutal, bro. Oh
yeah.
Man. I was out of commission for 2 weeks, man. It sucked.
Yeah. But the other thing is, like, I mean, something like having to go get your tooth pulled, right?
Yeah.
Or have fender bender or something like that. I've had a mate who got, one of my artists somebody questioned his cut, so now he's got to work extra hours to get money to pay for the bills, and he can't spend those extra hours that he had free to go on to do the comics. So I think more information is the better, and you're right, because I think a lot of trust comes from information. People understand that you're being fair with them about things, but then I'm sure you're going to have some
hiding, right? It's when you hide, people start to worry,
Yeah.
And like why are you dodging the questions? Why are you not updating? What's going on? You know what I mean? As opposed to being forthright. Like, people don't like being kept in the dark. That's just what it is.
Yeah, because you start thinking all the negative things in the dark, right? If you don't know the information, it's like, oh, he's going to bail on us. This is the project that's not going to happen, where he's going to take the money and run, kind of thing.
Yeah. People hate to think that they're throwing away their money, and when that does happen, it makes us all look bad. So let's say, for example, you're seeing this Kickstarter phenomenon happen. You've seen all these cool books, and this is the first time you ever back a book, right? And you go to say, I like this one. I'm going to go back this, and then that's the book you get burnt on, right?
Yeah.
What is the likelihood that person's going to come back and back more crowdfunders? Chances are it's not very likely at all, because they got burnt, right? And so that hurts all of us when that happens. So that bad apple in that bag turned the rest of us rotten by proxy, because now this guy who had this bad experience isn't going to come back and back any more books,
Yeah.
So on the opposite side of that, looking at your Kickstarters, you've obviously, your success has bred more success. You must have a few backers that are basically there for every issue.
Oh yeah.
Have you found that your sort of fan club, your backers, are actually promoting the book for you? The people.
Oh yeah. Look. We got phenomenal people that come back each and every issue. People that have been there since the very first one, right? All the way up to now. We have guys who just buy digital. We have super backers that buy one of everything, and they love sharing it. And that's the best part, right? So when someone gets their package in the mail and they do an unboxing video, or they take a picture of it and like, here's my stuff, not only does it make me feel good, but it's also free promotion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because now it shows, hey, this guy delivers, here's the goods. And it's not coming from me, it's coming from someone else. So it's like getting an endorsement from someone else. The other cool thing is fan art, right? We get a lot of fan art where people just like, they're inspired by NYOBI. They think she's cool. They want to draw her, and they draw her, and they send me these pictures. It's epic, man. And that, again, not only is like, hey, someone took the time out to draw my curation, at the same time, they're also giving us free promotion. You know what I mean? Do I hire artists as a flat fee per page or something else? No. So the way we work is all freelance, right? I don't have any partnerships with anyone. No one's co-owner of NYOBI, anything like that. It's all mine. And I hire freelance artists to come and work. Usually I'll say, hey, I need you. Like, for instance, Juan Antonio, who's drawn NYOBI Outbreak, when I first contacted him, I need to know you're going to be with me for 4 issues, because it's a 4-issue mini series. I don't want to change artists halfway through. So if you can give me a commitment, you're on for 4 issues, we're going to do business. He's like, yeah, let's do it, right? there's no contracts. I mean, I find contracts are a waste of time. How do you enforce a contract when someone's in a different country anyway? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, I don't know how that's done. So, I mean, if someone burns me, don't worry, they'll get roasted on social media pretty hard for it, and they'll probably never get work again. So it's not a wise plan to do that. So it's pretty trustworthy in that hand. But yeah, it's all freelance. So there's a page rate. We agree on a page rate. I usually pay ahead of time a few pages, like say 3 or 4 pages. Once those are done, we pay for 3 or 4 more pages, and they're done that way. No one's like taking the money and run. You know, I pay a little bit, I get something back. That keeps them coming back for more. That keeps me coming back for more. You know, it seems to work out that way. With cover artists, it's a little bit different because depending on who the cover artist is, they have different ways. So, for instance, like let's say you're dealing with the Jamie Tyndall. He's probably not taking half up front, you know, and half when the deal's done. That guy's like, no, you're going to pay me now. You know what I mean? But different guys have, you know, different ways they like doing things. So you find out if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then, you know, you might have to find someone else, you know?
Yeah. So this is something that I'm dealing with at the moment, right? I've just had, I think about 30 pages done on a 90-page graphic novel. Right. So out of the blue, and this is like you're saying about the enforcing the contract. Dude's on a contract with a publisher and not with me. I'm just an artist. I'm just a writer, right?
Right.
So, and letter or whatever, the book design and all the other things apart from the actual art. So decides to bail, and I'm like, okay, fine, you know, because I had another one last year after a year, because like you're right, it's a long process. A lot of people don't understand how long and arduous, whatever, you know, this whole creating a comic book process. So you're stuck in there. You know, you're trying to figure out what the look will be or what the characters will be, and you're going back and forth for a year, and then the next 6 months or so it's like the actual creating the book. So I was on a project with an overseas artist, and we got about, I think, 25 to 30 pages done. I was sharing it like because the project itself was based in Fiji, where I come from, and was based around, you know, around the homes, the actual buildings, village, and everything was part of my family, and it was going to be done like in that setting, but with a different storyline, you know, with a fake story, but actual real places in there. So one of the photos I shared with them, because I always take photos, like hundreds and hundreds of photos, so I didn't know what places look like when I asked somebody to draw it. And these photos were taken probably like about, I don't know, about half a decade ago or a decade ago. And one of them had a piece of my, you know, like a hand or something, right? And that was it. There were people in the photos, but because it had one of my, you know, my toe in it or whatever, right? Because I'd taken the photo of my cousin while I was lying on the bed, fully dressed, but my toe was in it. The guy says, I don't want to do anything more. That's it. I'm out of this.
And you're burnt, right? And that's sort of the problem with freelance is there's no way to, because they're not employees, right? They're freelancers. They're essentially hired mercenaries. Like, let's just call it what it is. You know, you got hired merc. A hired merc can walk out on you at any time, and what are you going to do about it? You know. You can either scrap the project, start over, or find someone else and draw the rest of it, which I hate. I hate that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, you know, but that's why it's very important, I would say, to find people that you know are reliable. Like a lot of times I'll give people a couple of tests. I'll test them first, right? Like, hey, draw me a cover or draw me an image or whatever, and I'll see how fast they get it done. I see how well they work. And then maybe I'll get them, you know, to draw one issue of something. And if that works out, cool, you know, and I see their speed and I'll see their enthusiasm. Like the guys I work with now, I have absolutely no fear that they're going to leave me. They're, you know, they want to be here. They want to do the books. They're hungry. I have one artist right now chasing me. When are we doing the next book? When are we doing the next book? You know what I mean? Because he wants to get paid. He wants money. But on top of that, they know that we're in shops now, right? So not only does it feed and put money on their table and I get art, but it also elevates both of our profiles now, because now not only are we just on Kickstarter, but we have Antarctic Press behind us, putting us in comic book shops, right? Who doesn't want that, you know? So my guys,
no,
you will run into guys who will do half a job and leave, and that sucks. And hopefully, you know, you find the guys that don't do that.
Now that you moved on to Antarctic, let's talk about how that process came about from Kickstarter going on to actual, you know, joining up with the publisher and then actually getting the diamond and all that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it happened because I've always read Antarctic Press books when I was younger. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but one of their longest running books is called Ninja High School from Ben Dunn. And I was loving Ninja High School back when I was younger. So Antarctic Press was always a company I was aware of. And Bach, you know, they did Robotech for a little bit. They've done Gold Digger, which is approaching issue 300. And then, you know, in current year, they do some of my other favorite books. They do Common America. They do Punchline. They do Patriotica. They do Rags. You know, there's a whole slew of new sort of generation of books that Antarctic's pushing, and I want to be a part of that. And we had started talking with their founder, Ben Dunn. He was looking for submissions and whatnot. And I invited him on my own show. I have a show as well where I invited him on and we got talking. And this is how the networking sort of comes into play. You know, before it used to be you would go to conventions and you would meet people. Maybe you would have dinner and, you know, you work out a few deals behind the scenes. A lot of that now happens right here on shows just like this, where you bring someone in, maybe you're interviewing them and you click and you talk and you get talking afterwards. And next thing you know, you're working on things together, right? It was the same sort of deal with Ben Dunn. So he had an anthology series called Exciting Comics, where basically if you're sort of new to the game and you're looking to get your story out there, they'll put you in one of these anthology books. So they'll take like your story, they'll divide it up in 3 or 4 parts, throw it out there to the masses, and sort of see what happens. And so we did that, and it worked out well for them. It worked out well for us. And so by proxy, then we put out the NYOBI Origins one shot, which is its own title. There, that AP logo means the world to me. You know, the other cool thing about doing that sort of stuff is, like, when you're with a publisher, you know, their ads are going to be in the back of your book, but guess what? My ad is in these books. You know what I mean? So you pick up an AP book and you go, oh, cool. You know, what's this NYOBI thing? You know, like, it's, you know, pretty awesome. And they've been treating me pretty good. No one's getting rich off it. I mean, they're not Image, they're not Marvel, they're a smaller publisher, but we're building something sort of special. We're working on something now called the Superverse, right? And so what the Superverse is, it's a collection of people who are coming together underneath the sort of the AP banner, where we're opening up the door for lots of crossovers and cross promotion and things of that. So like one of the things we're doing right now is the Antarctic Press swimsuit issue. So basically this opened up a call to all artists. Hey, artists, we want your artwork. Here's the deal. You got to draw a character, any character you want who's been published by AP in a swimsuit, and submit it to us. Right. So now we got all kinds of people drawn. Tomorrow Girl and NYOBI and Mary Machine Gun and the Cash from Ninja High School. And we're putting this all together in a nice big collection, beautiful swimsuit issue that would remind you of you know, yesteryear. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It reminds it reminds me of the 90s, like, right?
When magazine format, but it'd be something like this. Like the old school Marvel swimsuit stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, I remember oh gosh, I remember the X-Men back in the maybe 91, 92 had that.
Like when Jim Lee was like, you know.
Yeah, nice glossy pages, and almost like poster pinups. And it was something cool, something different. But I think it cost a bit more than a normal comic at that time as well. So it was a bit more, you know, it wasn't something that I bought at that time. But I did buy a few years later because it kind of becomes like a collective piece. You know, because you see the artwork of the great, you know, cover art, whatever, of the great artists of that time. So, so you join up with Ben Dunn, and how do you go? You know, like, I mean, I'm sure everybody's like, oh, I want to get with a publisher, get it in Diamond, and now everything's cool. So, how did you go? You know, how did that work out for you guys, and you know, the process there, trying to get into something like that, into Diamond, and
Well, Ben Dunn, Antarctic's already in Diamond, right? So once they picked
Right.
this up, I didn't really have to do anything at all. They took care of all the legwork.
Mm.
I just give them the work, and I get a little paycheck in the mail afterwards. But no, it's cool. I mean, when you see your stuff in Diamond for the very first time, it just sort of blows your mind. Like it's one thing, because anyone can make a comic book, right? Let's just. Well, it may not be a great comic book, but anyone can make a comic book if you got enough money. Anyone can make a comic book, and you can put it on crowdfunding. And if it's half decent at all, you're going to get funded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The difference, I think, is when it comes to publishers, they're a little bit more picky. You know what I mean? So they're only going to publish things they think can sell and what they think people want. And I'm glad that AP, looked at us as something that they wanted to produce and put out there to the world. I'll show you something cool. This blew my mind.
Speaking of the publishers only picking something that they can sell or that they want, have they offered any advice or suggestions for your character?
They just want more of it right now. Where the suggestion is work faster. That's the suggestion, because Antarctic Press will only take books that are completed, right? So, because they've been burned a couple of times, so they're not ones to like take on someone new in an ongoing series, and we don't do ongoing series. That's not what we're about, right? So what I do, NYOBI comes out in two different formats. It's either one shots, like it's just like one nice thick book. Here's the beginning and an end to the story, or we do mini series, right? So kind of like Danger Girl, like you can buy Danger Girl Mayday and then buy Danger Girl whatever, and then you know what I mean? And they all
like a 2-part or a 3-part or a 4-part story.
Right. Here was our ad for Antarctic Press. They gave us a nice big corner spot there in Diamond Magazine, And what I love about it is they basically made us the poster child. The next generation of bad girls starts here, So sort of like bringing back that sort of sexy vibe of the 90s and the early 2000s, Then I get to be on like the same page as Ninja High School and Gold Digger, and right across from me here is Chuck Dixon, famed Batman writer. You know what I mean? Like it's something else. Let's see. This was our very first Diamond. So this was Exciting Comics 17, the first time we were ever published. And this cover is done by Randy Green, who's known for his work after Michael Turner on Witchblade, So it's pretty cool to get him, you know what I mean? And it's just a lot of fun to be published, And there's like a snapshot of the actual magazine itself, you know what I mean? It's like look, if everything stopped now, okay, if everything stopped right now and my comic book career was done and I packed it in, I could go home happy. I've done it. You know what I mean? Now, that's not the plan. I ain't giving up or anything like that. We're gonna see how far this thing can go. After 9 years, when I made the first book, I would have been happy. Oh, hey, we made a comic book. We did it. Yay. You know what I mean? Oh, hey, we put out a few comic books. Yay. Oh, hey, we went to color. Like, there's always been that next sort of leap, And I don't know what the next leap is now, right? Obviously, it's going to try and get more out with AP. It's our new project, Savage Sin, that we're going to be pushing. But who knows? Like, I feel like picture an airplane on a long runway, and you're just burning down that runway as fast as you can. Now, finally, the air is starting to come up beneath the wings, and we're starting to lift up a bit. That's where I feel like things are kind of right now,
Yeah. So, so how do you let's talk about writing and the process of writing, and then we'll look at. So, when you guys are getting ready for Kickstarter, or when you're getting ready for that, how do you go about saying, okay, working with an artist and say, okay, I've got this story here and this is what we're going to do, because you're doing one shots, right? Are those one shots 22 pages, or are they longer?
It varies. I don't have a hardcore limit on what we do on books. I've done a book that was 20 pages. I've done a book that was 36 pages. It's whatever the sort of story demands. Usually, hey brother, what's up, man? Sam L. Quinton, he's a great guest. You guys should get him. He does a book called 47 Furious Tales. Listen, I can hook you guys up with a slew of guests. And not only that, I also want to extend the invitation to both of you gentlemen to come over to our show and promote what you have going on, because Art of Evan was just showing a book off there and I know nothing of it. So I would love for you guys to come on and, you know what I mean, tell us what you got going on, you know. I know our time zones are a little bit different, but whenever we can fit it in, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure Shane would be fine to jump on that. I'm still a bit in the process of actually getting work done on my side as a writer, because I'm a writer and you know, Shane's an artist, so we've kind of worked together on little projects before, and he's a great artist. But like, it's just great to see him now because he used to do cover art for other people, and but now it's just great to see him write and do the art on his own book. So yeah, it'd be awesome to have, if Shane's willing to just jump on.
I would love to have
you guys' podcast.
But I mean, this is the thing. This is how the networking happens, right? So
exactly.
Here you guys are way over in New Zealand. I'm way over here in Canada. There's so many shows and podcasts out there that I don't even know about, right? Like when you guys contact me, I'm like, oh, damn, I don't know who these guys are. I went and watched a couple of shows. Like, yeah, I dig this. Yeah, I'll totally do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, these guys are comic book creators and comic book fans. What's not to love here, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's a whole slew of people. Like if you wanted to interview Ben, I bet you I can make that happen. If you want to interview Tom Hutchinson of Big Dog Inc., I bet I can make that happen. You know,
that'll be cool, man.
Yeah, you guys just let me know. I'll be the middleman and get you in touch, man. Or you can just, I mean, honestly, if you just reach out to them yourselves, they're probably like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. You know, like just the way you guys did with me, right? I love this stuff. Like I'll be going live tonight, probably. I'm on the weekends. I'm always live. You know, like for me, I go live around 9 or 10 at night. That's like 15. You guys are 15 hours ahead in the future by that time. So,
that's what's kind of like sometimes gets a bit annoying, because like, I mean, we are amazingly connected by technology, right? At the very same time, but you're trying to work out the schedules and stuff. And like you go, over in America, they're like about 12 hours behind yesterday, and so I've actually one of the comic creators actually forgot what day it was. It was like he thought it was the next day, and so we missed out on that altogether. And I'm sitting here going, sorry guys, not going to be able to do that because all that. But I think this is, I mean, for me, I think this is the best time in the world's history to be alive as a creative person, because not only can you do it for yourself and be like like you did, to find someone to do the artwork and and then get it out there and be able to without a publisher, right? All those years without a publisher, you're just doing on your own.
Yeah.
And then having the technology to be able to connect with people all over the world and speak to them and then network like we're just doing now. Or talking about network as we're doing now, but like such a great time to be alive. And I think a lot of people don't understand how amazing a time period that we live in because of technology. The fact that you can have a tablet and you can draw on that on tablet electronically, and you can actually deal with some printer somewhere else on the other side of the world and have your book, or you can do it digitally and stuff. I mean, when I got into this whole comic thing, it was way back in about 2007. And I mentioned last week how, like, I mean, I put out, just doing it with a mouse on a mouse on a keyboard, right? Yeah. Just kind of like tracing around a short film, stills from short film a feature film that I'd done as a student, and turning it into a comic book. And then way back in 2007 and 2012, 100,000 copies were downloaded, right, for free. And I don't think that site exists anymore, but I think after that, Webtoon started up and all this, but this was before Webtoon. And then being able to work with so many different people, with so many different, and then being able to see so many creatives come out of the network on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and all this, on social media, showing their work that they've been able to take to Kickstarter, and other people who they may never ever meet, support them through this process for Indiegogo or Kickstarter, right? And like you mentioned, a couple others there, Fund My Comic. And to have that happen has never ever happened in history of anything, apart from, say, like, if you're a great artist and you have a patron who likes your work and pays your entire lives, entirety of your upkeep while you do your work. This is way back in Italy, and those way back, those times of Michelangelo and so on. But now we get to see, just the average Joe or Jane around the world, basically being able to support an artist like a creative person like yourself and the artists that you have work with you, and support these books being created to a point after, decade of working on it. Now you've got a printer, a publisher who's able to put that in an international comics magazine that's able to get them in the stores. That huge journey, all that. Now, in that roundabout way, the process of doing all this, have you, what were the hardships that you faced, right? We always talk about, because we get past all the good stuff and finally get through it, but what was it like, that journey, and talk about some of the hard, tough times you had trying to get these things happen.
Money's always like an issue, right? I mean, in the early days it was, right? So do we have enough money to do this? Do we have enough money to ship everything out? Can I even afford to make the next one, sort of thing? And you find ways to get it done. Personal problems in life happened, during NYOBI #2, I was dating a girl. She was the cosplayer for NYOBI. We had broken up. It sort of put a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't even want to do the comic anymore, because it was so tied into what we were doing. I was running a Kickstarter at the time, and I canceled the Kickstarter, and I thought I was going to quit there. I gave it about a month or two, and when I came out on my spin, I put it back up, and we got funded, right? And then, carry on. The biggest problem, and I don't know how deep you guys want to go into a subject like this, but I'll at least touch on it. The biggest problem is the polarization of politics in comics right now. Okay?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, I'm a guy who sort of rides in the middle. I'm not a hardcore right-wing guy. I'm not a hardcore left-wing guy. But if, by God, you say something out of turn that someone doesn't like somewhere along the way, you face the risk of being canceled, whether it's from either side, And
I've had that happen to me last year.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is the biggest hardship that I face. I was removed from a convention, not allowed to go back because I had a disagreement with another guy on the floor about a man's right to due process, of all things to talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I stuck up for that,
not just a man, everybody's right to due process.
Right?
Yeah.
So because I had mentioned something in a 30-second conversation, I was canceled. I've been fighting hard to get out of that. I'm not a bad guy. I'm not an evil guy. I'm not a quote unquote Nazi or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
I'm just a dude that makes his girl book, leave me alone, right? But we got into a time where everyone's so sensitive, where everyone takes offense to so much, and they're just ready to burn you, like to pin you to the stake and burn you down to the ground. That is the hardest part, honestly, of navigating this comic book world right now. To be honest with you, I like being neutral. I just like doing my own thing. I don't wave a banner. I'm not part of Comicsgate. I'm not part of anything. What I'm part of is Antarctic Press and NYOBI Comics.
Right.
And but I'll talk to anyone, right? Listen, on my show, we've interviewed people who do swing on the far left, and we've interviewed people who are on the right. I've interviewed everyone from Ethan Van Sciver to Eric Larson, and everyone in between. So we'll talk to anyone as long as you're cool to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same for me. I'll invite anybody who will come on the show, because it's at the end of the day, it's comics, right? It's what we love. It's creativity. It's like I mentioned right at the start of it. Why we do this thing here is because we want, for me, like in New Zealand, I want to inspire young creatives and older creatives to come out and do comic books, get involved in pop culture, to write, because we're not going to be here forever, right? So I'm thinking about, as a person who has no children, right? I'm thinking about kind of leaving a legacy of creatives to be able to say, hey, I inspired those people, or those people go, he inspired me to do something, or Shane inspired me.
Feeling,
or anybody that we bring on. can inspire someone who's watching this to do creatives after that, because we
I'll
want this. Yeah.
I was gonna say I don't want to, like pat myself on the shoulder too much here, but every now and then I'll get a message like that, be like, "Hey man, I was watching your show, or I've been digging what you do, and you inspired me to do this." It's just such the best feeling in the world, bro.
I mean, because it's like you wanna do something good in the world, like you said. You work the middle ground. You're not trying to be evil. You're not trying to be whatever.
I'm trying to do my thing.
Yeah. You're creating stuff because it's what you love, but the weird thing is, like, the society, it's become so polarized that you can't actually just say something and people go, "Oh, okay, yeah, if that's your view, that's fine."
Yeah,
but
there's no agree to disagree anymore. It's agree or I hate your guts.
Yeah. I think I got called about 3 different names last year on a group page, right? On a Facebook group thing. So
yeah,
and because we're such a small country, right? We're kind of like a blip when compared to everybody else. It kind of like it went right through the country rather than just being in this group. It felt like it went right through the country.
Yeah.
And and people were like, "Yeah, this guy is such and such and such," and I'm like, "None of you guys know me."
Yeah.
And you're like friggin' 20-year-olds, and I'm a 50-year-old. I've experienced 30 years more of life than you have, and so I have a better idea.
And it's so
not
hard
better idea, but a bit more nuanced about what's going on in the world.
Yeah, and it's so hard to come out of that once they sort of put you in these labels, right? Now it's not like, hey, in a year they're all going to forget it. No. Now you got this stigma that's attached to you, whether it's warranted or not, for like seemingly forever.
Yeah,
and it sucks
because you probably show up at another convention. They go, "Oh, that's that guy. Yeah, stay away from him," or something, because
Well, I mean, listen, they talk in private chats. Don't let anyone fool you, right? And I know they do because I've seen them. There are blacklists that float around that they pass around to each other. The quote unquote whisper networks do exist. They're out there.
Oh yeah.
Mostly in Facebook groups and Discords is where you'll find them, but they're out there 100%.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do is just keep being you, man. And that's what I do. I mean, hey, I can't go to this one show. That's fine. But I'm going to continue to win. I'm going to continue to publish. No one's going to chase me out of this place, Yeah. And the more they try, the harder I hit back. So,
yeah. One of the things, oh gosh. Oh yeah, that's right. My whole takeaway from all this is like, in this project, it's like, it's because they themselves aren't getting the recognitions they think they deserve, or what they're doing isn't valued, or the fact that they themselves aren't creative enough, or can't navigate life as better or as well as you do, and because of that, they think that they should pull you down to their level and so on. And it's a normal thing, isn't it?
Right? I've seen so many times, like, why is this book making more money than my book? My book is so much better. They're just using TNA to sell the book, and wah. And my first question, I remember I was in a convention in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, right? Where I got to meet McFarlane and Stanley. Great stories. I'll tell them to you someday. But I wish I'd met Stanley. I mean, the cool part is, long story short, is I gave them each a copy of my book, right?
Yeah.
Todd was very into it. He was flipping through the pages and, oh, this is pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where Stan was like a couple of years before his death. And I actually felt really bad for Stan because he was there all sort of hunched over, almost working on the machine. Like, the horror stories that you hear are true. Like, it was almost like an assembly line. Like, they pushed the books to Stan would scribble on the book, and then you got shuffled along. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hated seeing him the last decade.
What's that?
Yeah. I hated seeing him the last decade of what they were doing. I just can't stomach, like, seeing elderly being treated that way. It's like, it's just
he
like,
wanted to be there. You know what I mean? Like Stan wanted to be active. He still wanted to do things. And Tom McFarlane was the one that pulled him to Calgary. You know what I mean? Like, oh, come with me, blah, blah, blah. So, you can't just feel bad for Stan, because Stan wanted to do these things. But at the same time, you really picture the man should be on the beach drinking his his fruit alcohol drink and looking at the babes walking by. That's what he should be doing. You know what I mean? But he worked to the bone to the very end. But to go back to what I was saying, I had a table there, and this woman walks by, right? And she had her nose stuck up in the air, and she looks around right in front of my table, and there's all these cute cosplayers and all this stuff, and she goes, "Everything around here is nothing but an effing porno." And she looks down at my book, right? And I go, and I get it, we have some sexy covers. I can get where that train of thought can come from. So I go to her. I said, "Well, have you ever read NYOBI, right?" She looks at the book. She looks at me. She looks down at the book, and she goes, "No, and I don't need to either." And she goes walking off, right? Yeah. Well, there is that old saying of judging a book by its cover sort of thing, right? Right. And so you just had a guy in your chat named William Sam Quinton. When I first met Sam, he had backed my book, and he thought he was getting soft pornography. He thought he was getting smut, right? And then when you read the book and there was none of that in there, everything he expected just wasn't there. He's like, "Oh my God, like not only did you deliver a great story, but it's completely different than what I thought, because I will take on heavy issues in my stories. Like, how people say don't do politics and religion and all that stuff. Screw that. Yeah. I throw that right out the window. But what I do is when I do touch upon these social issues, like, for instance, I did a story on abortion. I did a story on teen suicide. I'm doing a story on the virus, right? All sort of sensitive issues. But I like to take it, like, if you read what I write, you should have no idea what side of the aisle I stand on. Right. Right. You know what I mean? It should be like when I did the abortion story, I came at it from 2 points of view. You had the pro-life, you had the pro-choice, and this big collage. And at the end of the book, no one won, right? They didn't win because they couldn't work together to figure out the common problem. Right. So, like, that's how I like the story tell. It's like where the book, you shouldn't be like preach the message, but you should be given a story and then scratch your head at the end of it and leave you in thought,
Yeah. I mean, like, there is that side of things where if you're looking at like some sort of message, or if you're just pure entertainment, right? So how do you balance that out?
Carefully. I mean, like, when I touch a subject like that, I gotta handle it with kids' gloves. Like I said, I can't come off preachy. I can't come off one-sided. I remember, like, the X-Men have done it for years, where they tackled some really different social issues, but you never looked at it as like, you're being preached to. You know what I mean? You just looked at it as great, compelling stories that sort of had a reflection on today's world, right? I think that's important to reflect on today's world, For instance, so in my world, the genoms, they're the oppressed class. They feel like they're the ones that are being held down, that there's systemic racism against them because they have powers, right? And they're in protest, and that the H class, which is the human class, are the bullies. You know what I mean? And that we're locking them up and we're putting them away, and so I tackle all these things. I'll take today's world and I go, all right, let's see how this would work in a superhero sort of universe, without coming across again as a right winger or a left winger, just as a guy who's observing what's happening around him and throwing it into the story,
Yeah, you still, like, I mean, I think artists, I think, are the middle ground when it comes to the world, right? Because we see the world and we sort of put it out in a creative way back to the world and say, hey, look, this is what I think of, how the world is. And we come up with such great stories, but also entertaining. And as you said, with something sort of social in it or message orientated in it. And I think that's why, and you're right, X-Men, Claremont, right? That whole Claremont run in the 90s and late 80s are the greatest comic books of all time that I can think of a monthly book.
I would not be doing comics if it wasn't for the that X-Men run. Yeah. Plain and simple. There'd be no NYOBI, there'd be no nothing.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, like, that's because I used to be like Shen, I used to be a 2000 AD reader, like hardcore Judge Dredd.
It's funny how everyone I meet from New Zealand loves 2000 AD. Every single one of you guys. And it's great because Judge Dredd's awesome, but
Yeah, well, because it was available at the shop, right? At the newspaper, news agents, whatever. and we could pick it up for, I think it was 60 cents back then, or 50 cents.
Cheap.
For me, it was like, I didn't have the pocket money that every other kid had. Like in our house, there was none of that pocket money thing. So I don't have a monthly comic book or anything like that. But my neighbor across from me, Regan, he would get them all the time, and that's how I got into it, And from reading Asterix and Obelix and Garfield and Archie, whatever was available, to getting into 2080. And you're right, Kiwi kids have that, who are into comics, have that ingrained in us in our young teenage years, and we kind of like have a different view of the world because of that, because of the stories of fascism in 2080. Right. It's kind of shown us what the world could become like, and so that has given us a moderate outlook at the world. But I was thinking, like, so, gosh, I lost my train of thought about that. But I think, so then when I moved away from home in the 90s, I went to live in Auckland, which is another city, far, like about 2-hour drive from where we are, which is like,
that had a comic book shop is Auckland.
Yeah, so it's like, nobody really had a comic book shops here in New Zealand. They just had, bookshops, and there might be a couple of things there. But so when I went to Auckland, they did have a comic shop, and it was like about 1989 or something. And I picked up I think it might have been a secondhand X-Men or something like that. And that was it. It was a Claremont book. And I was in. I don't remember the issue, but every book I got, you mentioned Image and all that, never got into Image. I had a couple of books from them in the start, never got it. But I had every single mutant-related book. Yeah. It was just eating it up, because Claremont wrote it in such a way that he changed the way, that you could tell great stories in comic books. It wasn't just fighting and world changing and fighting and world changing, which has become right now, right? In the main industry, in Marvel and DC. But back then it was an ongoing story that built upon what he was doing, and it's just the structure of the universe. It spoke to you, right? You could, like, Genosha. That whole idea of Genosha and like being a fascist, place where they'll, like, you're saying about the genomes, where they'll lock up, mutants and stuff and all that, and then you have like you're talking about the other side of things where, the Mac, people having the augments, right? So then they have the Sentinels, it's sort of all this thing where for a kid like me in my late teens, right, about 17, 18, going from 2000 AD, which is like, I am the law, right? And this is how it's done, the law, right? And if don't let her, you get shot, that sort of fascism or whatever. And then you're going to read something like X-Men, and you see the world in a totally different way. And having those two books, those two things, X-Men, Claremont X-Men, and 2000 AD, I think it was Alan Grant and so on, writing those. For us Kiwis, for me, it totally brought a balance in how I see the world. And I think for people who don't have that sort of in them, that sort of like a balance of that, they either go to the left really hard or go to the right really hard. And so I think artists have, great artists have a way to speak to the world in a way that brings the two sides together. And I think for what you're doing, feels like that is what that is what you have done, is like told these stories in a way that you're not judging or you're not accepting, but you're balancing out, kind of like in a way that's like, you have these, like, what we call TNA covers, but you bring out this amazing stories. And why did you how did you go, well, this is how I want to tell these stories? Like, you could have just done like this whole bad girl storylines with. But how did you actually get into going, okay, well, this is what I'm going to put into my comic books?
Well, I mean, you already answered the question. It's the X-Men, right? It was that whole run, right. Very much influenced by the X-Men. If you read one of my books, you go, oh, yeah, he was an X-Men fan. I mean, through and through. Yeah. I mean, it's not hard to pick up. I mean, I got genomes, I got social issues. The X-Men had all that. I take them in different directions, but I have that stuff, right? Like, again, the only people that have superpowers are females in my world, and when they use them, all their eyes glow. There's no hiding it. Their eyes definitely glow when they use their powers. You can't hide these people. And stuff like that. NYOBI is just sort of the focal point of a whole universe I'm building. I got a bunch of characters that show up in the book, and eventually I'll be doing a team book called Bad Girl Academy, which will basically be NYOBI and cohorts as their own female version of essentially the X-Men.
Right.
So it wasn't a hard stretch. Those are the types of books I enjoyed reading, so those are the types of books I enjoy writing.
Hey, while we're on NYOBI, talk about how what her what is NYOBI, what's her what is she about, bio and stuff, and how she have these powers and so on.
Well, again, like in the mutant world, when you get scared, excited, a boost of adrenaline, sometimes that's your powers will manifest, right? In our world we call that an eruption. So she had erupted during a concert when she was getting mobbed by a group of fans, and she had teleported away, and there was no hiding that. It happened in front of everyone. With technology today, everything's on camera, right? And so she had to come out to the world and say, yeah, I'm a genome. This is the deal. And she started working with what I call the Aberration Response Division, the ARD, which is a group of people that sort of regulate and keep an eye on these superpower beings. And so instead of fighting against them, she decided to work with them as sort of like a public relations ambassador, to try and bridge the gaps, right? She's having a hard time doing that. But that's her deal. She's not a kick-ass, quote unquote Mary Sue type. NYOBI often gets her ass kicked and barely sort of scrapes by, But we have some really cool characters. Cat Call. We have Sybil, who's like our Emma Frost telepath of sorts. We have Drake, who manipulates machines. She's basically our evil version of Tony Stark that runs, a good 50% of the world's tech sort of idea.
Hey, so I was thinking about like early on. You mentioned about teleportation. Is it Shadowcat that does it? Oh no, it's Nightcrawler, isn't it?
Well, Nightcrawler does it. Magic does it. Blink does it. There's a handful of X-Men that can turn around.
So how does her power work as a teleporter?
Well, she creates portals, much like Magic or Blink. But NYOBI can do so much more than just teleport, only she doesn't really know it yet, right? So she can teleport from one place or another. There's no limit on how far she can go. If she wants to cross the street, she can. If she wants to go to China, she can. But what she's going to discover is that her teleporting is also going to allow her to time travel. Pretty soon she's going to step through a portal and be able to go back in time, go forward in time, and eventually she's going to be able to cross dimensions with it. So go from one reality to the other,
That's what I was thinking. I was like, is it just to because that was my first thought. Was like, does she go back in time or something, go forward in time? Because that sort of opens up such a great,
whenever you ways of time travel, you got to be careful because you can muck a lot of things up,
Yeah.
So it's something I use sparingly, but she doesn't know she can do it yet. But when I built her in the past as just like a role-playing game character, she was always able to do these things. So eventually I'm going to work those things into the book. Right now, she's just purely teleporting from place to place, but eventually she'll screw up sometime and end up going back 5 years and go, what the hell did I just do?
So we've been talking about your character and stuff, and I noticed that one of your Kickstarters was for a trade.
Yeah.
What was that trade called for people that want to start reading it?
It's called NYOBI, the trade paperback. It has NYOBI Birthright 1 and 2 and the origin story. So the origin story, you'll actually see her at the concert, getting mobbed. Well, actually, I have it right here. But yeah, you'll see her getting mobbed by the group of fans. You'll see her manifest her powers. So the origin story is pretty cool. And there is a little bit of time travel in the origin story because someone comes from the future. So there's there's NYOBI, performing with her girl group, right? She gets yanked off the stage, and then in front of everyone, she powers away. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, this is the origin story. So this is the first issue recolored.
No. Not at all.
No.
So
okay.
That's another story, but I'll give you the quick version. So when we did the black and white, I was kind of going with a different story arc, but the problem is like let's use an anthology of Kyle Walker. Oh my God, you guys know Kyle Walker?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Kyle Walker's a great friend of mine. He's like the other New Zealand guy I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Me and Kyle Walker used to do YouTube live streams together all the time, man.
Okay.
All the time, man. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle Walker, big X-Men fan. Once again, big Judge Dredd fan, big Star Wars guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So good to see Kyle Walker in the chat, brother, man. Miss you, bro.
Yeah.
Now I completely lost my train of thought here.
We're talking about like the trade paperback.
Sure. Yeah. It's, we just put out the trade because people want to read NYOBI in sort of like one volume. But we did the black and white stuff, and picture like being a sculptor, right? And you're learning to sculpt clay for the very first time, and you're going to muck it up a few times, right?
Yeah.
That's what we did with the black and white NYOBIs. I wasn't really happy with the direction. And then when we switched teams and went to color and we had that like year break, I'm like, if I'm going to restart it or do a soft reboot, now that we kind of know what we're doing, now it's the time to do it, right? So that's what we did. So essentially, the black and white stuff doesn't really count. I know a couple of people got mad at me for that, but we were just, learning how to mold the clay. You know what I mean? Now that we played with it a bit, and now we know what we want to do and how to do it right. Now we're giving you what we want. So the very first NYOBI story has nothing to do with her origin, but in the back of that story, there is a 2-page bio, and that 2-page bio is the whole inspiration for the origin story that we did put out. Because when we got published by Antarctic Press, I'm like, let's make NYOBI the origin story the first thing that you put underneath her name. Right. Even though there was some stuff before that, let's give them the origin story first, and then they can read everything that follows. You know what I mean? And that was sort of the decision to do that.
Yeah, I kind of like, I was just thinking like when you're doing like, that hiccup or whatever, that was like this for me. I was like,
so what is this? Tell me about what you have there.
I sort of like went, okay, we put this out last year at a convention, and I put down $500 to get it done. Did about 40 pages, sold a whole, couple, and I came away thinking, I don't like this book. I don't like this book. I've spent, whatever, and then like I was like, it was going to go to Kickstarter, and I pulled it off Kickstarter. We had all this set up. And I pulled it off, and I went, I don't like this book, and I don't want this out there. But I'll, if it's my friends who have bought it and enjoy it, that's fine. But the rest, there's about 30. I think there's about 30 or 20 pages, left. And I was like, I'm gonna put that aside, and it'll be like if somebody wants to buy it, we'll give, it will be like the add-on. But this isn't, this isn't the book, right? So we did write a whole new story with a whole new artist, and very, very cool. Like the inside work. I mean, like it's nothing like this, right? This is like from the like 2006, 2010 or something. Decade old artwork.
Cool, because here's the thing with these old books that you and I got, and whoever else is, without that, we wouldn't be where we are, right? So, like imagine like the very first time, Eastman and Laird drew the Turtles. I'm sure it's a completely different thing than what it has become to today. You know what I mean? But without that initial start, without, taking that first piece of clay and trying to shape it, who knows, like.
Yeah. I mean, like,
go ahead.
I was thinking like, talking about Eastman, right? With his Turtles, right? From those little things that's gotten to be this. After so long,
Well, this is it,
but,
I think since we talked about the change in artwork and stuff, in your NYOBI comics, do you, for each separate story, each separate issue, do you use different artists deliberately, or do you stick with
but because in the world of freelance, people often move on to different things. So like, we did Birthright, which was a 2-issue miniseries, and the guy that did that, I wanted to use him again, but he wasn't available when I wanted him to be available, right? He was on 3 other books, and it was taking him a long time to get to my stuff. I'm like, well, I can't wait that long. I'm going to have to find someone else, We picked up Juan Antonio. Like I said to him, like, I need to know you're in for 4 issues, right? Yep. Okay, cool. So when that 4-issue miniseries is done, Juan will have a choice. Juan can continue to draw more NYOBI, or if Juan wants to move on to something else and we find someone else, then that's what we'll do. You know, as long as the work between each one-shot and miniseries is consistent, it's fine. But I like to use the same people, but sometimes because they're freelancers, they're going to go to where the immediate jobs are, you know?
Right.
Okay. Well, another random question. If your comic took off and got extremely successful and you could pick any artists you wanted, what would the couple of artists that you'd want to work on your book?
No limits. I can go with any names I want.
Anyone.
I mean, there's superstars,
Even
of course, you're going to use, right? like first of all, J. Scott Campbell's on top of the list.
Yeah.
Right.
That's only because you're doing Bad Girls, right?
Well, sure, but that his style fits that. I mean, like I was collecting J. Scott Campbell ever since like Danger Girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have a couple of those comics. Yeah. In my collection,
and I still buy his work today. Like I don't buy very much Marvel, but when he does a Marvel cover, I usually pick it up. You know, just because I like his work. You know, he is the dream guy, right? But I've gotten to work with dream people already. You know, I've gotten to work with Ben Dunn, which was like a big thing for me. I got to work with John Stinsman, who's done work for Image Comics. He used to work right underneath Rob Liefeld at Extreme Studios. You know.
Okay.
And so he's drawn for Savage Sin and NYOBI. I got to work with Paul Green. I got to work with Randy Green of Witchblade. So I got to work with like some of my heroes already. But I mean, Jay Scott would be one of them. If Michael Turner was alive, he would have been another one. You know.
Yeah, man.
I mean, we can throw out the usual names like McFarlane, Art Adams, Jim Lee. You know, like all those cats. You know.
Yep. Talking about Michael Turner, actually on Facebook, I used to talk with him.
Oh, nice.
Way back, like in like I think it was 2010, and you know, and it was really cool. I mean, like this is in the early days, right, of Facebook and stuff. You could actually talk to creatives, professionals, and you'd have good Discord with them before the whole social media became just kind of like almost like a toxic place, you know, for professionals be talking with like like just everybody else,
right?
And it kind of it's become very political where you can't really talk to your favorites because they kind of like hate you, or they have this horrible view about just because you don't think the same way they do about things. Did you Michael Turner had amazing style. I mean, like he's one of the most, I think as an artist, he's one of the most missed ones. Do you think so? Or...
Oh yeah, look. Michael Turner was he would have been as famous as J. Scott Campbell now if he was still around. You know what I mean? Yeah. If not more so, right? He'd be so high priced, no one would be able to afford him, just like J. Scott Campbell. I'm going to share a picture with you. This is one of the covers that we had done by someone I really wanted to work with, and I couldn't believe we got to work with him. You know what I mean? This cover here is done by Jamie Tyndall, man. Just absolute, gorgeous. This is coming out. This will be on our next project, NYOBI Outbreak #2. With Jamie Tyndall, doing this. Go ahead.
So, just before I forget, I keep wanting to ask this question. So, how did you come up with like NYOBI's ethnicity, right, as a character? Because here's you Canadian, European white guy, whatever, but you've created a character that is Japanese, totally different to your own ethnicity, whatever.
Oh, she's half Japanese. She's half Japanese, half American. That's her ethnicity. And the only reason why I was done that way was because I was watching a lot of anime at the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and she was a J-pop star, so like that was all influenced by that. This here is going to be hopefully one of the covers for the next Antarctic Press swimsuit issue that we did.
I kind of recognize the artwork. Who's that art?
Joel Souza, but it looks a lot like Bruce Timm, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking Bruce Timm.
Yeah, he's got that sort of Batman animated feel to it. 100%. You know what I mean? This here's another image we're going to put up in the swimsuit issue. This is done by LC Faritas.
It's kind of like.
This here's Mike DeBuffalo. I couldn't believe we got a chance to work with Mike. That was an unbelievable bucket list. This is Keith Garvey. Couldn't believe we got to work with him. This is John Stinsman. dudes, like living the dream. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
Sometimes I got to pinch myself to see if it's still real sort of thing. You know?
Yeah.
Here's another random question. Since we've
Sure.
just talked about the art side of your comics,
Mm.
if you had the opportunity to write someone else's existing character or characters, what would your dream job?
I think the obvious answer would be give me the X-Men, since I'm kind of doing that anyway. I still have your NYOBI comics, Larry, in my collection. Hell yeah, Kyle Walker's got the one and only Kyle Walker blank variant sketch cover. Seriously, like, so I made these personalized sketch covers, and it had everyone's name on them, right? So there's only one of those for Kyle Walker, and he's got it. You know, like, it's pretty cool. But yeah,
so that is something like independent creators can do, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's something very personal that you're able to connect with people from around the world. You're not held back by what you're doing because you're the one who owns what you're doing, right?
Right.
So this is, having something special like that, go to Carl and having that issue, I think it's such a magical, I don't know, it feels almost like airy-fairy, kind of like a girlish thing when you say it's a magical thing that you get to own something. I would never
deal with a company that wouldn't allow me full ownership of my property, right?
Yeah,
that was like one of the big things, when we talked about publishing, in choosing a publisher or submitting to a publisher, was Antarctic Press has sort of got the Image deal where they don't own anything, So I'm like, oh, you mean I can still publish my own stuff my own way, do the Kickstarters, do my thing, and you will put it in shops?
Yeah.
And I don't have to change a damn thing, and no one, and I still own everything? Hell yeah, man, that's a win-win, right?
Yeah.
And so I can do stuff like that if I want. And it doesn't matter how much this grows or doesn't grow. I'm always going to keep ownership of it, unless like Netflix or someone says, here's $10 million. Great, I'll take it, and I'll just make a new character. But, anyone that says they wouldn't take the money is lying. But, outside of that fantasy, right, I own NYOBI, and I will probably always will own NYOBI. I can do whatever I want. It's great. Sometimes my ideas work, sometimes they don't, and it's through my own successes and failures that will sort of dictate where this goes in the future.
So your other comic, the Sin one, is that a spin-off of NYOBI?
So not really. No, Savage Sin is my love letter to Red Sonja, to Tarna from Heavy Metal, to Lady Death. It's a dark fantasy that features a hot female warrior who happens to be from a tribe that has been overrun. Like in the first issue, they're overrun by a marauding scourge of fishmen. You know what I mean? And she's eventually going to get, exiled and on her own, and she's going to have to travel the realm, And it's
kind of like a Conan sort of,
right. 100%. And so she's going to have all these adventures in my old D&D fantasy world. And it was just something different to do, because I think fantasy for me is a little bit easier to write, because I have a little bit more room to play with things that normally can't happen in the real world. Even though superheroes can't happen in the real world, there's still a lot of constraints, right? In a fantasy world, I absolutely have sort of zero constraints. And it's just sort of fun. And on top of that, it was just to see if I could get people to buy something from me that wasn't NYOBI. And for a first issue, $15,000 wasn't bad. I'm sure the next issue will hopefully we do 20. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we just sort of go up from there. Savage Sin's a 3-part miniseries, and if that does well, then we'll do another miniseries or one shot with her. And Antarctic Press is willing to publish those. So once they're done, then they'll take them, and then they'll put them either in a big volume or we'll release them separately, however they want to do it. But they'll get out there in the world eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, in New Zealand, it's quite hard to get some of the ongoing series, because being at the bottom of the world, if like X-Men number whatever sells out, we don't get the next thing.
And not only that, it's so expensive for you guys, right? Because I've sent stuff to Kyle, and I know Kyle has sent stuff back and things like that. The shipping cost is unreal,
Yeah.
For what you guys got to buy.
Are the one shots and the short stories, is that deliberate because of that sort of thinking?
Yeah, it's deliberate because I don't want to string people on and not finish something in case this ever does come to an abrupt end. At least with the one shots in the miniseries, I can tell a complete story in those. And then, essentially, if you never read NYOBI before, you should be able to just pick up one of these one shots or miniseries and be just fine, as opposed to, you're jumping in the X-Men on number 374 and you have no idea what the fuck's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that, of course, that was half the fun of collecting back in the day, though, too, was going back and bins to sort of find out what happened before. But now people want it to be a little bit more handed to them, if you will, right? They don't want to have to do all this digging and all this research. That's why manga is so popular right now, because they have them laid out in nice volumes, which was another reason to do the trade, right? Because a lot of people don't buy floppies anymore; they buy trade paperbacks, right? So
I mean, you're right. Because I mean, but the other thing about manga is, and why it's so popular, is because you can get chapters, right?
Yeah,
you can read the chapters online, or Shonen Jump or whatever, and then it gets collected at the end of it when it's ready into a big, nice little paperback, right? And you can read it, and and so I think the idea, and it's a complete story as well most of the time. So how do you, because how do you do a 22-page story that is going to captivate your audience for that whole story in a short sort of like a 22-page?
Well, when you're
it's almost like
comics, you sort of know the pacing, right? Like intuitively, you know the pacing of how a comic goes when you read enough of them. But my general writing process is I write the ending first.
Right.
So I know how I want it to end. So that way I know where I need to get to, and now I just got to weave that web to get there, as opposed to starting from something and not knowing how it's going to end, like watching, remember the TV show Lost? I don't think the writers had a clue on how that thing was going to end. You know what I mean? I don't want that to be me, right? So I have an ending in mind. Okay, this is how this one shot's going to end, or how this miniseries is going to end. This is the big climactic thing. Now, how do we get there? And it makes the job a little bit easier. Sometimes you have to cut pages out, which sucks. Sometimes you have to add a couple of pages in, to make that story work. I don't deal with an editor per se. I have someone that goes over my bad spelling and my grammar, but I don't have someone going, hey, you should take this panel out or add this page in or anything like that. I sort of do that on my own, to whether my success or failure with that. But I recommend people getting an editor. But for me, I feel comfortable enough with the amount of comics I read that I know how to pace one out pretty decently, Right.
It's pretty cool, man. Because I always kind of think okay, because you're coming with, to be honest, I think you are coming at this whole comic thing from a totally different way to everybody else, because you're putting up complete stories in a single book. Whereas other people,
I stole that idea from J. Scott Campbell, because that's how he was doing Danger Girl. So Danger Girl used to be an ongoing series. Now when they put out Danger Girl, it's in the form of miniseries.
Right.
And so I'm like, that's sort of like a better way to do it, That way you're not totally committed to this long thing. You can do the story you want to do, and then you can go pick up the next story. And if you want to weave a couple of connections in there, you can, but ultimately, it'll all build a bigger story in the end, but I like to keep them separated, a little bit.
Yeah, I think, but the other thing also is I think it allows people to have trust, right? When you have that, because we were talking about that earlier about how Kickstarter, sometimes people get burnt, but the fact that you're doing a complete story, people know that they're going to have a complete story, and that they don't have to buy anything else or the one before, unless they want to. But they have a complete story in their hand. And I think that's the great thing about what you're doing on this side of things when it comes to, the independent side of things.
It's also fun just to have a set of something, right? Like I remember being a kid and buying all 4 issues in the Magic miniseries. Like, I got all 4, it was a big deal to me, right? I got the whole thing, as opposed to trying to get the whole run of 700 issues of X-Men or something,
Yeah,
I know
that's
what Kyle
Walker's
trying to do, because Kyle Walker has the giant size X-Men. He's still yet to send me in the mail, Kyle. I'm waiting for my giant size, brother.
Yeah, I think that's a hard thing, right, at the moment, to try to. I think it's probably why people are moving away from mainstream comics as well. The fact is that it's gotten so that they keep rebooting, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you something just quickly. Let me just figure out where I put it. Around me, like yourself. This is the latest thing from DC,
DC, okay.
right?
Yeah.
So this is going to change the DC universe.
Yeah, but that's what
Again.
they said about Rebirth. That's what they said about the New 52.
Yep.
You know.
Again, right? It all starts here.
Yeah.
Head to your favorite comic stores on Tuesday, May 16th to get your free blah, 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 and everything you need to know to jump on board. Again,
yeah.
And, you know, so it's like New 52 startup, you know, did its run great. It was like the one before that as well. There was a 52 weeks thing.
The 52,
And there was like Rebirth, like you mentioned. It was like, it's like, dude, I can't, like for the last so many, like I used to own a comic store, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and in that year, there were so many reboots and crossovers that at that point I was like, this is it. This is not going to work. You know, this is the whole idea of just changing every couple months in a big, huge event is never going to work. And lo and behold, it does. It hasn't worked. And so everybody's, even myself, have moved over to manga to read, right? Yeah. So, and all they keep doing is like new every couple months, right? 3 months, there's going to be a new event, right?
Well, there's so many reasons why the comic book industry is sort of not working right now. You touched upon one of them. Well, actually, we touched upon a couple of them. Well, first of all, availability, right? If you can only get these things in comic book shops and more are closing than opening, we're in trouble.
That's it.
Okay, that's one problem.
Yeah.
The other problem is price. Okay, $4.99 for a comic book. People don't like paying it. You know, they wish the books were a little bit cheaper. You know, you can spend like $20 and maybe get yourself a nice big 200-page book, or you might be able to buy 3 floppies. You know what I mean? So that's another big problem. Yeah. The other issue is, as you mentioned, is, you know, the constant reboots. You know, there's also the political messaging that sometimes is being, you know, pretty forcefully jammed down people's throats.
Shane commented on a page from, was it from Marvel or something, where one monster got up and like, it was an X-Men book, basically berating, you know, whoever she was talking to, and because he was white.
Yeah,
it was all these things, and then he was in a comic book, bro. Who reads who are the most of readers of comic books and collectors? White guy.
Yeah,
to be honest. Because we've grown up, you know, I mean, apart, you know, even with me, right?
Sure.
Out of everybody in my friendship, my friends group, I was the only one reading comics, right?
Yeah.
So, in the sense is that, like, because I grew up on fantasy because of how I was brought up, and stuff, and for escapism, right? And so, if you are going to berate the very people or put down the very people that are the bread and butter of your industry, you are just saying, don't, you know, I want
well, certainly not a smart business move, I'll tell you that. You know, to alienate anyone, to be honest with you. Like, I'll sell to anybody, race, creed, sexuality. You know, you want to buy our books, we're more than happy to do that, you know, for you and with you. You know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the comic book industry, and I feel like the comic book industry is becoming more of a niche market than it's ever been. But in a way, it's sort of worked out for guys like me, and in a way it hasn't. You know, the reason why Kickstarters are doing so well, I feel, is that the people who still like comic books are looking for them, and they're not exactly finding them, you know, or the types of stories that they're used to reading. So they're coming to Kickstarter and they're taking a look now, you know. And we got to thank guys like Brian Polito, who, you know, is like the Hulk Hogan of Kickstarter. You know, that's little guys who get to be on the same card as him. Maybe we get to be seen. You know what I mean? Because that's how I got into Kickstarter, was Lady Death. I was buying Lady Death, and then I decided I'm going to do one of these myself. You know, everyone sort of got that story. You know, so I feel like we're in the crowdfunding age of comics, But at the same time, I feel like we can build something with Antarctic Press as essentially the new Image 2.0 for independent creators.
Sure.
So many of my friends have gotten signed with Antarctic. My buddy Max from Mary Machine Gun, he's in preview magazines now. You know, our friend Scott Wilson, who's doing The Flock, he's going to be in exciting comics. Nicholas Mueller with Demon Hunter Raven, he's also being printed with AP. You know, and then they just have like their legacy creators, and then guys like Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini with Common America. It just right now it's a good time to be in that. I just wish that we had a bigger reach than what we do now. You know, I can sell 400 copies of NYOBI on Kickstarter, 400 backers. But when we did our Antarctic press release, that's 2,500 extra eyeballs that we sold. Okay. Yeah. And so that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think about it, that's 2,500 people that probably never heard of Kickstarter before and are probably just used to buying their books at a comic book shop, right? So now, instead of just, you know, sort of selling to one group of people on one platform, Joe Blow, whoever he is, can walk into, you know, X comic book store and see my book and pick it up for the very first time. And I would have no idea that happened, you know. And I've gotten people message me, yeah, you know, I got this NYOBI. I found it at my shop. It's great. And I'm like, oh shit, that's cool. You know what I mean? And we'll just build from there. But I wish the comic book industry was like the way it was in the 90s. God, what a boom in time. But we all know what happened. Bubble burst and speculators killed it. You know?
Yeah. And I think the same thing's is happening now. I know like for us as independent creators, you know, we want to give people what they want, right? So we provide variants and stuff and so on as part of, you know, a special artist to come on to do the covers and stuff, or posters or pinups or whatever. Now, on the other end, I haven't bought a regular, like, I mentioned the last one, so Shane's already heard this one, but like, I haven't bought a regular series in over a decade. I think since I closed, even before I had the comic shop, I think, no, just after I had the comic shop, I just basically, it was such a bad experience of that I stopped basically reading comic books because I was reading Batman with Rebirth, and what the writer basically destroyed what Batman was, right? And the one comic that I was reading, I stopped reading. I was reading Constantine. They stopped Hellblazer at 300, right? And then Punisher. Then they destroyed Punisher, and I'm like, you've destroyed all three of my favorite comics, and I'm never going back now. Then they destroyed X-Men, not going back. So I'm collecting the old stuff. So the industry doesn't want people like me to be part of it, right? The mainstream. So
they really don't. They're looking for the younger readership, and their problem is they don't know how to get them.
Right.
They don't know how to hook them. I've talked to so many young kids, right, about comics and stuff, and they're all reading manga. You know, they're all reading manga. They, you know, I have a patch on the back of my jacket that has NYOBI on it. I'm at Best Buy the other day. You know what I mean? And this kid comes up. That's a cool patch you got. What is that? I'm like, oh, that's my character. It's my comic book. Oh, you do comic books? Yeah. Oh, where can I find it? Tapas, Webtoon, manga? I'm like, no, none of those. I'm like, comic book. Like,
exactly.
Like, it blew his mind. You know what I mean? Didn't even fathom that's what it was, you know?
I want to show you something just before because you mentioned manga, right? So this is a cover by Dan Mora, right? And I mentioned this on Twitter. So Chainsaw Man, right?
Sure.
It's one of my favorite characters now. I read 5 pages of it, and I stopped because I'm reading online, and then I promised myself not to read anything or watch the anime or anything until I buy all the books, right? Because I realized that this was an amazing character that I didn't have. Now, this is from this, right?
Yeah.
And this is the cover art.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Doesn't it remind you of Chainsaw Man? Because that's what it did for me.
Haven't never read it, kind of. But I know lots of people who love Chainsaw Man. You need to get in touch with Draw and Talks, Tyler Carpenter. You guys would have a hell of a talk, man. Yeah.
So this look is basically, if you replace, gonna hold it properly. So if you replace the gun with a chainsaw, that's it.
Yeah. You see, I have a hard time bragging up manga, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like that's shooting ourselves in the foot when we do it.
hold on for a second. I'm just I want to show find it. So it's somewhere, but I can't seem to find it. So I actually have Poochie, right? So and I think Shane's seen it. You've seen Chainsaw Man, right? The image of Chainsaw Man.
Yeah.
It's basically looks like this, but the chainsaw instead of a gun, and the teeth.
Sure.
So you can see the teeth, right?
Yep.
It's just like that.
Yeah, here's the thing with manga for me is I don't like to brag it up because I feel like that's shooting ourselves in the foot. And do you know why?
Oh, of course.
Because if I'm going to sit here as a comic book creator and say manga is the best, you're just going to go out and buy manga. You're not going to buy our stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
right. That is true. And I understand that. But my whole thing is like saying, why, the thing is like you've the mainstream saying, oh, they're doing so well, right? They're doing so well because manga's doing so well. So they think they're doing so. They're not. And you're right. No, there, you just proved it, right? By bragging up on manga, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot. My whole thing is like on that is like, well, why is manga winning, right? Why is manga winning? It's because you've pushed your people who are your readers, your customers away by what you put in the comics, right? What the mainstream, and then you're saying, oh, they're doing so well, so that's making us look good. It's not. And you're right about that.
Why they're doing so well is availability. You can buy manga almost anywhere now. Right? You can go into Walmart and buy manga. You can go into Barnes and Noble and buy manga. But you're not finding the floppies there. And if you do, it's very, very rare. And if you do see like a graphic novel or trade paperback, it's on a tiny little shelf, hidden somewhere in the back corner. You know what I mean? That no one cares about. Manga is also a little bit more affordable. You get more story for your buck. And let's be honest, as a kid who grew up loving anime and then kind of fell out of it a bit, but there is an art aesthetic that really appeals to the kids, right? You want to think about anime. The reason why anime and manga is so popular now is because of streaming services, because now it's more readily available than we were young, right? So when I was young and watching anime, it was sort of like a treat if we had an anime. We had to put 2 VCRs together, dub each other's tapes, and it felt like this sort of like underground thing. Yeah, we're watching these cool Japanese cartoons, and they're subtitled. But now you can go to Netflix or Crunchyroll or Filmation and just watch whatever. And so, also shows like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that really captured a generation. And so that was like their first introduction to like an anime manga sort of vibe. And they just sort of attached themselves to that, and that's why.
That is true. Yeah. I think like I've got a friend who's like about 2 decades younger than me, right? So 20 years younger than me. So he's grown up on all his age group people, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Pokemon, not comic books, those things, because it was on TV when they were growing up.
Right.
And I think, and you're right there, because it was, for us, it was this, right? When we were growing up, it was, Superman animated, right? Batman animated. And so we were able to get that. But there isn't that, as that cartoon things to bolster up, the comic books anymore.
Well,
right?
Not only that, people get their fix now through the movies for their superheroes and things of that nature, and all the television shows, that they really don't care about the source material anymore. They've gotten their Marvel movies, and and when you do decide to go look at a comic book, right, it's so completely different than what they're producing on the screen,
right,
that it doesn't even relate.
Well, and that turns away people, right? Sorry, carry on, James.
Slightly different take on why manga and some of the independent comics are doing better than Marvel and DC, and I think it's because the storytelling with manga and the independent ones, they're usually created by 1 or 2 people only. There's no committee, hundreds of millions of dollars of movie studios behind them telling them they can and can't do this.
Oh yeah, it's so regulated now, right? You're absolutely right, dude.
Independent movies, independent comics, you get a stronger vision of a person's character,
Yeah, you're 100% right. There's no 5 editors telling me what to do. 100%.
Right. Yeah. What goes in is what you put in, right? And that's what you get. I mean, like seriously, like most of the time, Shane's right. This is Jin Kobayashi. That's it. He does the art. He does a book. That's it, right? That's him. And if you now go to this guy, there's probably about 10 people or 5 people working on this book, right?
Yeah.
And or any of these books. Look.
Well, look, when you do an arc like that, you have to have like these big summit meetings. You have to get all these writers together. You have to agree on certain. Please give me a minute, man.
So this is what you have to buy.
Sorry, I gotta go, guys.
For the story. That's cool, man. Like we're out of time anyway. So before we finish, we give you like 2 or 3 minutes to do your final words. So
well, I have company, and they've been waiting on me very patiently to. Okay. I just got to knock on the door, right, to hurry up. You know what I mean? Like,
thank you for your time, man, and I appreciate it. Okay. And I'm sure Shane, I'll put you in contact with Shane, and he'll be able to come on and talk about his work. And later on, probably in a couple more months, I'll come and join you as well, and we'll chat about what we're doing.
Is there anywhere you can get NYOBI comics online or easily? Or everyone that's
well, we have an eBay store where we throw up a few issues here and there. You can get them digitally on Gumroad, but there's no like NYOBI.com yet. You know what I mean? I've tried it before, and no one really came there, so I'm just like, why bother? Maybe when we get a little bit bigger, we can try it again. Huh?
Can you get them from Antarctic Press? Do they have a website?
Yeah, that'd be one place. I mean, there's like some online comic book shops where you can go and find them. Like if you type in NYOBI Origins #1 on Google, there'll probably be a slew of places where you can order them. But I mean, if you get them through Antarctic, that'd be great. Or if you come to our eBay, that'd be even better. So,
Awesome.
Excellent. Listen, thank you, Larry, for your time, man. I really appreciate it. All the best, and we'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.
Or I'll be on your show, whatever. And happy to network, man.
I would love to have you, man. And I'll get you a meeting with a few new peeps, and we'll get some more balls rolling. You know what I mean?
Thank you, bud. All right. Catch you later.
Peace out.
Yeah.
All right. We're not finished yet, guys. We're just going to carry on for a bit. We actually got a really cool interview there with Larry. I mean, I really like the idea from this about how the whole process of that decade of him, just doing that whole black and white, and then saying, after a while realizing that it's not what he wanted. I mean, because you're always starting as an artist, a writer, and you're coming up with something and you don't know it's going to work, or you think that's how it is going to be. And when you a couple of years later, you realize, that's not what I want a better version of that. I mean, I went through that myself with Incredible, right? And what about you, Shane, when you're doing Wasteland and stuff?
Wasteland. Well, Wasteland's kind of that was years and years of sketches in a sketchbook before I started that. So it's a character that's been floating around for ages. So luckily, I didn't really have to develop it too much. I just had to come up with a story.
Yeah.
So
how did you actually what is the gist of your story with Wasteland?
Well,
Chronicles of Wasteland.
Yeah, if I tell you the gist of the story, it kind of gives away some of the ending. So I would just say it's set in a post-apocalyptic world, and they encounter a new character.
Yeah.
And it has quite a big impact on the story. So it's kind of a hard one. It's a very simple story. If I say too much, it gives away the ending. So
cool. So Jason Lanny down in Christchurch published it for you, or how'd you get about getting it printed up and all that?
He helped publish it. Yes, he found the printer and stuff and helped. He gave me a few suggestions on a few little things here and there. So it's Jason Lanny, because he publishes Fun Time. He helped sort that out.
Yeah.
But I paid for it myself. I just wanted to actually finish a comic and just print my own product.
That's the thing. Like because we're independent creators, a lot of times we're paying for our own creation to get it out there. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there is so much difficulty in creating and not after you've created it and actually getting it printed, getting published, making the connections, try to get your money back. And a lot of times for us, independents, we don't really think about getting the money back. We just want to break even because we just want these books out there. And if we can break even, that's fine. That means we're not losing anything. And it also gives us, I think, a bit of pleasure in like realizing that people are actually buying our stuff. And so we committed to do more. Did you, have you, like you mentioned that you had some feedback about it? I heard somebody reviewed it as well. What was the review like?
That was Stu from Heroes for Sale. Stu and Ricardo, they've got a podcast all about comics. The review was very nice on the. Well, to be honest, the review overall was actually completely positive, except for the part about the language and because his take on it was I couldn't sell it to. There's a big portion of his customers that he can't show the book to because it's got swearing and nudity. But he said overall the story and the artwork and the presentation was great. So as much as it sounded half negative, because I wrote a story with violence and swearing in it, I didn't take that as an insult at all. It's like I knew what I wrote. It's kind of aimed at my taste because it's my book. But they're also easy things to tweak for in the future. So it's not a negative at all. I considered most of the review was extremely positive. So
awesome.
And he's grabbed quite a few copies. And again, you mentioned how we do it just for the love of it. I gave it to him at cost price. So when he sells it for $10, I think in the shop, or $9.95, it's like that's giving him a couple of dollars profit, and that's it. So this is not to make money. This is just to get a comic out there.
And also, I mean, like you're building on this because you got another 2 more issues to go. You want people to get involved in the art, and the story and so on. So I'm really excited about seeing how this works. When how long do you think it will go before you can get the second or the third one out?
I'm working on the second one right now.
Awesome.
So got a few pages.
Brilliant.
That way.
Right. So you're not going digital on this. You're actually going traditional.
I still do the inks traditional. The grey tones and the text is all digital. I draw just as quick traditional as I do using the tablet, so it's kind of a speed thing. And I just enjoy it.
I'm gonna have to buy one of your pages.
So straight after the podcast where he said language and nudity was a concern, I'd already done my first opening page. So about 2 hours after he talked about my language and stuff, I had just finished this. So so that page may be getting redrawn.
But I mean, when you scan it, when you scan it for digital, you could remove that in digital.
That one, I might just trace the bottom part and do a patch in Photoshop, or I might actually just keep that as the true original. So if anyone wants to buy the original page, they get a one-off that no one else will ever see.
One of the other things I'm thinking is like you'd actually be able to print those off as mini posters for your friends who don't mind that. I know a few of our mates would be into that, just for something different. Hey, so how long is your process in working, because you work full time, right? So how do you try to find the time to do that?
Luckily at the moment, my drawing, the way I draw, I've been drawing forever, so I'm getting fairly quick at it. And I'm also getting to be less of a perfectionist, which sounds terrible, but it's not, because I mean, if you wanted to make a perfect comic page, you'd take years to do an issue. You've got to realize, as long as it's clear, it's easy to read, and people get what you're trying to do. You know, I used to be extremely fussy. That's why I never got anything done. I'd be trying to make the perfect page, and it's like they just don't exist. You know, so you look at some of your favorite artists, and they've got days where it's like you can see some of the pages that they rushed. You can see pages that they didn't care about. But as long as it tells a story, I'm kind of thinking like that in my head now, so I can just get it done. I still have pride in my work. There's still, after the first one, when I finished the 24 pages of story, I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to fix like the 5 worst things I can see. So there's about 5 or 6 patches in the first issue where I redrew a couple of panels or I took a couple of things out. Well, I said, unless it's extremely bad or it doesn't make sense mainly, I'll probably go with it and leave it. But in general, I'm actually pretty happy with the artwork because I thumbnailed it. It's all planned out, thumbnailed and stuff anyway. So when it reads clearly at a small size, you know it works.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we're at the 2.5 hour mark. Usually we only do 2 hours, but I'm just so glad we've had, to be able to talk to Shane about his work as well. And I mean, because, you've just put a book out and I don't have a chance to like really, promote or talk about it with you about this. And so I'm just glad we've had the chance to do that here, bud. And look, if you're watching this out there and you think, I'd love to share my book on PlungeCast, right? Get in contact with us. The email, I'll put the email on here. It's on our actual YouTube page, so if you can go about and you can find the email there. Or also under here on the video on YouTube, there'll be the email there you can get contact with us about, because we only do this twice a month. So that's why we do a long form of interviews, because we only do it twice a month. It's on a Sunday. It gives us, you said it's 4 hours of, interview time over 2 really cool people. And we've had really amazing people this year so far, and if you can check out, Dean Rankin from Australia. We've had a voice actor from, Blue Lock, freaking, one of the most well-known right now, because of World Cup voice actor. We've had an artist from Fiji, who's been published by an American publisher. We've had last week, we had a Kiwi on here as well. So check out our our Facebook, our Facebook page. Of course, there's always a Plunge Convention, one word, Plunge Convention, and also check out PlungeCast on YouTube, and please share and like, and let people know what independent creatives in New Zealand are doing as well, because we're out here creating comics as well. We're not at the bottom, just sucking in everybody else's artwork. We're actually putting some creative things into the world in the pop culture scene with comic books. Shane, do you want to have any last words before we finish up here and ciao?
Just support local comics. Buy some of the independent ones. I think they've got stronger stories. And if you want to make comics in New Zealand, there's several pages on Facebook. There's a lot of people to see, and Plunge will have most of the contacts. There's Make Comics NZ on Facebook. There's New Zealand Comic Creators on Facebook. And yeah, just support New Zealand comics and just comics in general.
Excellent. Thanks, bud. All right, well, I'll let you get on with your Sunday. And for everybody else, thank you for joining us. And share and feel free to come on our in our comments and talk to us in our comments on Facebook. And we'll, like we've done, we'll put your comments and questions out to our guests, and we have you interacting, because it's all about discourse here and being able to share what we're doing out here and with each other, and actually hopefully we can inspire you to do work, get into comics, or you might be able to have something that you want to add to what we're talking about. So feel free, and until next time, ka kite anō, be well wherever you are and be safe. and have a good day. Till next time.
Yeah.